Hey guys! Tonight we will see why you couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Before that, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comment where you tuning from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Before sunrise. Waking before the village. Tonight, you find yourself in a world without electric lights, alarm clocks, or the comforting hum of modern machines. The morning begins not with a phone buzzing on a bedside table, but with a silence so complete that it almost feels alive. It is the sort of silence that only exists before dawn, when even the birds have not yet decided that the day should begin. You are about to discover why you probably couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because dragons might attack your workshop. Not because a wandering knight demands an impossibly perfect sword. And certainly not because every day is filled with grand adventures. The real challenge is much quieter than that. It is found in ordinary mornings like this one, repeated day after day, season after season, for years on end. And that first morning begins now. The room is dark. Not the dim darkness of drawn curtains or a cloudy morning. This is true darkness, the kind that wraps around everything once the last candle has burned away. Your bed is little more than a sturdy wooden frame supporting a mattress stuffed with straw. It isn't especially soft, though after years of sleeping here, your body has long since stopped expecting softness. A thick wool blanket keeps away the night's chill. It carries the faint scent of sheep's wool and the clean smoke from countless evenings spent drying beside the hearth. For a few peaceful moments, you simply listen. There is no traffic. No distant airplanes. No humming refrigerator. No notifications asking for your attention. Instead, there is only the gentle whisper of the wind brushing against the wooden walls. Somewhere beyond your window, leaves rustle quietly. Far away, perhaps from another cottage at the edge of the village, a rooster offers the first uncertain call of the morning. Not every rooster is punctual, it seems. Even in the Middle Ages, some preferred 5 more minutes. You smile quietly at the thought. The village remains asleep. There is no rush. At least, not yet. Eventually, habit gently nudges you awake. A medieval blacksmith cannot afford to sleep until sunrise. Iron waits for no one. Farmers certainly wait for no one. And horses, as you will soon learn, have a remarkable talent for losing a shoe at the most inconvenient possible moment. You sit up slowly. The cold air greets your face immediately. Without central heating, the inside of your cottage is only a little warmer than the world outside. Your feet touch the wooden floor. It is cool beneath your soles, polished smooth by years of careful footsteps. You stretch. Not dramatically. Just enough to wake muscles that have worked hard for many years. Your shoulders remind you of yesterday. Your hands remind you of every yesterday before that. Even before breakfast, they already carry the quiet memory of thousands upon thousands of hammer blows. Outside, the darkness has softened only slightly. The eastern horizon hints at a pale shade of blue that will eventually become morning. But not yet. The stars still linger overhead. You dress simply. A linen shirt. Strong wool trousers. Heavy leather apron folded neatly over one arm for later. Nothing about your clothing is designed to impress anyone. Its purpose is wonderfully uncomplicated. Keep warm. Protect your skin. Last as long as possible. Fashion, while undoubtedly appreciated by those with wealth, has very little to say inside a blacksmith's workshop. Ash, after all, has an equal opportunity approach to decorating clothing. Everyone leaves wearing a little more grey than they arrived. Before stepping outside, you pause beside the small hearth inside your home. Yesterday's fire has faded into soft grey ash. You stir it gently with a stick. Hidden beneath the ashes, one tiny ember still glows faintly. It is a comforting sight. Fire has a patient nature. Even when it appears asleep, it often waits quietly for another chance to awaken. You place a little dry kindling over the ember. A careful breath. Another. Soon, a tiny orange flame stretches upward like someone waking from a pleasant dream. For a few minutes, the room grows just a little warmer. Enough to enjoy a simple breakfast. Breakfast is modest. A piece of dark bread baked several days ago. A small wedge of cheese. Perhaps an onion. Maybe a little ale or watered beer, safer to drink than water in many places and often weaker than modern beer. It is not a feast. It is fuel. Your work ahead will ask much more from your body than this simple meal seems prepared to provide. Yet somehow, it always does. By the time you finish eating, the sky has become a deep shade of blue. Not daylight. Only the promise of it. You step outside. Immediately, the fresh morning air fills your lungs. It is cool and wonderfully clean. Tiny drops of dew rest upon every blade of grass, catching what little light the sky has begun to offer. The village is peaceful. Small cottages sit quietly beneath thatched roofs still damp from the night. Thin ribbons of smoke begin rising from a few chimneys. Here and there, another early riser opens a wooden door. An elderly woman sweeps her doorstep with slow, practiced movements. A baker disappears inside his oven house, already preparing bread that the village will smell long before anyone sees it. Somewhere nearby, a sleepy cow announces that breakfast should perhaps be served immediately. The cow, it must be said, seems rather confident that its opinion matters greatly. Perhaps it does. Milk is important. You begin walking toward your workshop. The path is familiar. Every uneven stone. Every old oak tree. Every fence repaired more times than anyone remembers. The village itself is small enough that nearly everyone knows your name. Not because you are famous. Because your work quietly touches nearly every home. Every plough. Every cooking pot. Every wagon. Every horse. A blacksmith is rarely the center of attention. But remove the blacksmith, and village life slowly begins to stop. Broken tools remain broken. Loose wagon wheels stay loose. Harvests become harder. Doors refuse to close properly. The smallest pieces of iron often support the largest parts of everyday life. Most people simply never notice. That, perhaps, is the nature of truly useful work. Your workshop stands near the edge of the village where sparks are less likely to threaten nearby homes. Its walls are built from thick oak timbers darkened by years of smoke. The roof is simple. The doors are heavy. Everything here values strength over elegance. You unlock the wooden door. It creaks softly, almost as though greeting an old friend. Inside, the familiar scent welcomes you immediately. Charcoal. Iron. Leather. Wood. Warm ash lingering from yesterday. It is an oddly comforting mixture. If someone bottled the fragrance and called it essence of medieval productivity, it might never become fashionable. But you would instantly recognize home. The workshop rests quietly in the cool darkness. Your anvil waits exactly where you left it. The great block of iron has stood faithfully through countless seasons, bearing the marks of thousands of careful strikes. Nearby rests your hammer. Simple. Balanced. Reliable. Unlike many modern tools filled with switches, batteries, or moving parts, this hammer asks very little. Lift, Aim. Strike. Repeat. Several thousand times. It has a wonderfully straightforward philosophy. But before any iron can be shaped, the forge must awaken. You kneel beside yesterday's ashes. Most have cooled completely. Still, experience has taught you never to assume. With a metal poker, you gently move the grey blanket aside. Tiny flecks of warmth remain hidden beneath. Just enough. Always just enough. Fresh charcoal is added carefully. Small pieces first, then larger ones. Patience, you already know, is one of the blacksmith's greatest tools. Rushing a fire is rather like trying to hurry a sunrise. It rarely listens. You strike flint against steel. Bright sparks leap into the waiting tinder. For a moment, nothing. Then a thread of smoke curls upward. A tiny orange glow appears. Another careful breath. The glow brightens. The charcoal begins to whisper. Soft crackles become steady pops. Soon, a warm orange light slowly fills the workshop, chasing shadows into the corners and painting every wooden beam with a gentle golden glow. Outside, dawn has finally arrived. Inside, your day is only just beginning. And although the forge has only begun to breathe, already you can sense the truth behind tonight's story. You haven't even lifted the hammer yet. And the work has already begun. Preparing for the day. The forge is awake now. Not roaring. Not yet. For the moment, it breathes in slow, steady rhythms, much like the village itself. The bed of charcoal glows with a gentle orange light, while thin ribbons of heat begin to drift upward through the open chimney. Every now and then, a tiny spark rises into the air, dancing for a brief moment before disappearing into the growing daylight. You stand quietly beside the fire. There is no reason to hurry. One of the first lessons every blacksmith learns is that rushing rarely makes the work better. Iron has its own pace. Fire has its own rhythm. Trying to force either one is rather like asking the moon to rise before sunset. They simply refuse. So you wait. In the peaceful silence, you rub your hands together, welcoming the warmth that slowly reaches your fingertips. Only a few minutes ago, the morning air had left them cold. Now, the forge is gently reminding you why blacksmiths are among the few people who rarely complain about winter mornings. Summer. That will be another story entirely. The workshop slowly reveals itself as the light grows stronger. Everything has its place. Not because someone insists upon neatness, but because searching for a missing tool while a piece of iron cools is a wonderfully efficient way to create twice as much work. Along one wall hangs a collection of hammers. At first glance, they all appear nearly identical. A modern visitor might look at them and confidently declare, "That's certainly a lot of hammers." A blacksmith would smile politely, because each one has its own purpose. One shapes broad surfaces. Another reaches narrow spaces. One leaves smooth finishes. Another persuades stubborn metal with considerably less diplomacy. Over the years, your hands have learned each hammer's weight so completely that you seldom need to look before reaching for the right one. Your fingers simply know. It is a quiet kind of memory. The sort that comes only after repeating the same movement thousands of times. Nearby rests a collection of tongs. Long ones. Short ones. Wide jaws. Narrow jaws. Curved ends. Flat ends. Each designed to grip iron of different shapes. Without them, working at the forge would become extremely exciting. And by exciting, we mean briefly memorable. The iron, unfortunately, is always much hotter than it appears. that lesson usually requires only one mistake. Thankfully, experienced blacksmiths prefer learning from other people's mistakes whenever possible. Against another wall lean several finished pieces from yesterday. A bundle of nails tied neatly together. A pair of sturdy door hinges. 3 cooking hooks. An iron ring that will eventually become part of a wagon. Nothing here would impress a king. Yet every piece matters. The nails will help repair a roof before autumn rains arrive. The hinges will allow a family to close their front door against the winter wind. The cooking hooks will suspend pots above a fire that prepares countless meals. The wagon ring will help carry grain from the fields. This is not glamorous work. It is something better. It is useful. And useful things have a quiet dignity all their own. You pick up one of yesterday's nails. It is surprisingly simple. Just a straight piece of iron, carefully shaped into a point with a broad head. Nothing extraordinary. Yet someone spent time making it. Someone heated it. Hammered it. Turned it. Cooled it. Inspected it. In your own time, nails arrive by the hundreds inside tidy little boxes from a hardware store. Most people never wonder where they came from. Here, every single nail begins as a patient conversation between fire and iron. By midday, you may make dozens, perhaps hundreds, each one almost identical, each one requiring nearly the same careful attention as the last. There is something strangely peaceful about that repetition. You take a soft broom made from bundled twigs and begin sweeping yesterday's ash from the floor. Grey dust gathers into small piles. Tiny bits of charcoal crunch gently beneath the broom. It is simple work. Quiet work. The sort of task modern people often try to finish as quickly as possible. But here, there is little reason to rush. The customers have not yet arrived. The village is only beginning to stir. You sweep slowly, methodically. Each stroke clears another small piece of yesterday, making room for today. The workshop seems to appreciate it. Even old buildings feel calmer when cared for. Sunlight finally slips through the open doorway. At first it arrives as a narrow golden beam stretching across the floor. Then another. Dust motes drift lazily through the light, floating so gently that they seem to have forgotten gravity altogether. For a moment, you stop working simply to watch them. It is a tiny moment. One easily overlooked. Yet mornings like these are full of tiny moments. They ask for nothing. They simply exist. And perhaps that is enough. Outside, the village has begun to wake in earnest. You hear footsteps passing along the road. A cart rolls slowly over uneven stones, its wooden wheels announcing every bump with gentle creaks. Somewhere nearby, chickens begin debating matters of great importance. The discussion appears lively, though entirely incomprehensible. A dog gives one thoughtful bark before deciding that further barking would require unnecessary effort. The baker's oven is now fully hot. Even from here, the comforting aroma of fresh bread drifts through the morning air. Warm flour, yeast, wood smoke. If smells could wave hello, this one certainly would. You make a quiet promise to yourself that you will stop by later. Assuming, of course, that every horse in the county does not simultaneously decide to lose a shoe. You step outside for a moment. The morning has transformed completely. The eastern sky glows with gentle shades of gold and pale pink. A thin mist lingers over nearby fields, softening every fence and tree into gentle silhouettes. Beyond the village, farmland stretches toward distant woods. Small patches of wheat shimmer beneath drops of dew. A narrow stream catches the sunlight, flashing silver as it winds quietly through the landscape. Nothing moves quickly here. Even the breeze seems content to wander without destination. It carries with it the scent of damp earth, fresh grass, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers growing along the roadside. You take a slow breath. For just a few moments, before the day's work begins, the world feels perfectly balanced. The blacksmith is often one of the first people awake. That means you witness a part of the day many others sleep through. You see the village becoming itself. The shepherd opens his gate. The miller's wheel begins turning with the current. A young apprentice hurries across the square carrying a bundle almost larger than himself. An old woman places seed upon her windowsill for birds that seem to know her schedule better than any clock. One by one, the village comes alive. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But gently. Like the sunrise itself. You return to the workshop. The forge has grown hotter. Its glow is now bright enough that the iron tools nearby reflect warm shades of orange. You place another small scoop of charcoal onto the fire. The coals answer with a cheerful crackle. Above them hangs the leather bellows. Large. Sturdy. Made from thick hide stretched over wooden boards. You grip the handles and pull. The bellows opens with a soft sigh. Then you press. A steady stream of air rushes into the fire. Instantly, the charcoal brightens. Orange becomes brilliant yellow. Tiny sparks leap upward like a handful of glowing stars. Again. Slowly. Pull. Push. Pull. Push. The rhythm is surprisingly calming. Long before machines powered furnaces, it was simple human hands that kept the fire alive. There is something deeply satisfying about that. You are not fighting the fire. You are helping it breathe. The warmth now fills the workshop completely. Not uncomfortable. Not yet. Just enough to chase away the coolness of dawn. You rest one hand lightly upon the smooth wooden handle of your favorite hammer. Soon, that hammer will scarcely leave your grip. It will rise and fall thousands of times before sunset. Your shoulders will notice. Your back will notice. Your hand certainly will. And that is precisely why you probably wouldn't survive very long as a medieval blacksmith. Not because the work is impossible, but because it is ordinary. Relentlessly ordinary. Every day asks for patience. Every day asks for strength. Every day asks you to begin again before sunrise. There are no dramatic victories waiting at the end of the week. Only another morning. Another fire. Another farmer needing a broken tool repaired. Another horse needing fresh shoes. Another pile of iron waiting quietly beside the forge. The work never truly finishes. It simply pauses each evening before beginning again the next day. A shadow appears in the doorway. The day's first customer has arrived. He removes his wool cap with a friendly nod and carries a worn iron plowshare beneath one arm. There is no emergency. No urgent news. Only a simple smile. "Morning," he says. You smile in return. The village is awake now. And so is the forge. The real work is about to begin. Learning the language of fire. Every color has a meaning. The farmer lays the worn plowshare gently upon your workbench. It is scratched from countless journeys through fields of soil and stone. The edge has grown smooth with use, and here and there you can see tiny marks where hidden rocks have quietly challenged the strength of the iron. He does not seem worried. In fact, he looks rather relaxed. That tells you something important. In a medieval village, broken tools are not unusual. They are simply part of life. Wood wears down. Leather stretches. Iron bends. And somewhere, almost every day, someone walks to the blacksmith's workshop carrying an object that has faithfully served its purpose and now asks for a little more care. You nod as the farmer explains where the plough caught a buried stone during yesterday's work. There is no need for long discussions. After years of seeing similar repairs, your eyes already understand most of the story before a single word is spoken. The iron itself has become remarkably good at telling you what happened. You lift the plowshare with both hands. It is heavier than many people expect. Modern tools often benefit from lighter alloys and carefully engineered designs. This piece, however, was made to survive years of hard labor beneath open skies. It is thick, solid, honest. As you turn it slowly beneath the morning light, your fingers glide across its surface. You are not simply looking. You are feeling. Tiny ridges. Small dents. Slight curves. Every mark offers another clue. The work of a blacksmith is often compared to shaping metal. But first, you must learn to listen. Not with your ears alone. With your eyes, your hands, your patience. You place the plowshare beside the forge. Not inside. Not yet. That is another lesson modern visitors sometimes struggle to appreciate. Just because the fire is ready does not mean the iron should immediately follow. Preparation comes first. The hammer is laid within easy reach. The tongs are chosen carefully. The anvil is cleared. The path between each tool remains open. Nothing should interrupt the flow of work once the metal begins to cool. Hot iron is wonderfully cooperative. For a very short time. Then it grows stubborn again. A blacksmith quickly learns that planning ahead is far easier than racing against cooling metal. You reach for the bellows. Slowly. Steadily. The leather expands with a quiet sigh before pressing fresh air into the glowing charcoal. The forge answers immediately. Orange becomes brighter. Then brighter still. The heart of the fire shines almost white. Not blinding. Just intensely alive. You feel the warmth against your face even from several steps away. The coolness of dawn has now become little more than a memory. Summer, you suspect, will make the workshop feel rather enthusiastic. Perhaps even a little too enthusiastic. At last, you slide the iron into the coals. Not completely. Only the portion that needs shaping disappears beneath the glowing charcoal. The rest remains outside the fire, resting quietly upon the edge of the forge. Now, you wait. For someone accustomed to modern life, this waiting might feel unusual. There is no screen to glance at. No messages arriving every few moments. No timer counting down. Only the gentle crackling of charcoal. The occasional pop of sap hidden deep inside a piece of fuel. The soft whisper of warm air rising toward the chimney. The forge encourages patience because it offers no alternative. You cannot hurry iron. You cannot convince it with determination. You simply allow heat to do its quiet work. While the metal warms, your attention drifts beyond the doorway. The village has fully awakened now. Children laugh somewhere near the well. A pair of geese march across the lane with the unmistakable confidence of creatures who believe the road belongs entirely to them. To be fair, everyone else seems willing to agree. A merchant's wagon rolls slowly past, its wooden wheels singing their familiar song against the uneven road. Nearby, someone is splitting firewood. Each measured strike echoes gently through the cool morning air. Life unfolds at an unhurried pace. No one seems to be racing. No one checks the time. The sun itself is the village clock. When it rises, work begins. When it sinks, the day gently comes to an end. There is a quiet simplicity in that rhythm. You turn back toward the forge. The iron has begun to change. At first, it hardly seemed different at all. Dark grey slowly became a faint reddish glow. Easy to miss unless you knew exactly what to watch for. Then the color deepened. Cherry red. Warm. Gentle. Almost beautiful. A few moments later, bright orange begins spreading across the surface, like sunrise flowing over distant hills. This is the language every blacksmith must learn. There are no numbers displayed beside the fire. No digital thermometer announces that the metal has reached precisely the correct temperature. Instead, you learn colors. Deep red, bright red, orange, golden yellow. Each shade whispers something different. Too cool, and the iron resists every hammer blow. Too hot, and the surface begins to lose its strength. The difference between success and disappointment can be measured by little more than the color of glowing metal. Imagine trusting only your eyes. Every single day. For decades. It sounds difficult. Because it is. Perhaps this is the first reason you might struggle to survive as a medieval blacksmith. Your modern world is wonderfully generous with measurements. Your oven tells you the temperature. Your car reports tire pressure. Your phone quietly updates the weather. Here, experience becomes the measuring tool. No display. No numbers. Just observation. Hundreds of mornings. Thousands of afternoons. Years spent watching iron glow beneath charcoal until your eyes understand its language almost without thinking. Knowledge settles slowly, like dust upon an old workbench. One day you realize you no longer have to wonder. You simply know. Satisfied, you grip the iron with heavy tongs. The metal leaves the fire glowing bright orange. Tiny flakes of black scale drift gently onto the ground as it meets the cooler air. You carry it quickly but never hurriedly to the anvil. There is a difference. Rushing creates mistakes. Steady movement creates confidence. The plowshare settles onto the smooth face of the anvil. For one brief moment, everything becomes still. The hammer waits above the glowing metal. Sunlight streams through the doorway. The forge crackles softly behind you. A swallow darts across the open sky outside. Even the village seems to pause. Then, clang. The first hammer blow rings across the workshop. Clear. Strong. Confident. Not loud enough to startle. Just enough to announce that another day's work has truly begun. A second strike follows. Then another. Each one carefully placed. Each one changing the iron ever so slightly. The hammer does not fight the metal. It guides it. Patiently. One careful blow at a time. And before long, the familiar rhythm settles over the workshop once again. Clang. A brief pause. Clang. Another pause. Clang. The sound carries softly through the village. To you, it is work. To the baker across the road, it is simply another peaceful morning. To the children playing nearby, it is the steady heartbeat of home. And to anyone listening from a comfortable bed hundreds of years in the future, it is the quiet reminder that some of history's hardest work was also some of its most ordinary. The fire glows. The hammer rises and falls. And the long day has only just begun. Your first simple creations. The repaired plowshare rests on the anvil for one final inspection. You run your fingertips lightly along its edge. Not to test whether it is sharp, that will come later, but to feel whether the surface is smooth and even. The farmer watches with quiet confidence. He has likely stood in this very spot many times before. He knows the rhythm of the workshop almost as well as you do. There is no need to hurry you. A hurried blacksmith usually creates 2 repairs instead of 1. One for today, and another for tomorrow. So he waits patiently. You nod once, satisfied with the work. The iron has returned to the shape it was always meant to have. It will soon return to the fields, where it will disappear beneath the earth once again, doing its quiet work far from anyone's attention. The farmer thanks you warmly, lifts the heavy plowshare onto his shoulder, and walks back into the growing morning. The workshop becomes peaceful once more. Only the gentle crackle of charcoal remains. For a few moments, there are no customers. No wagons. No horses. Just you, the forge, and the comforting stillness of the early day. This, perhaps, is one of the nicest parts of being a medieval blacksmith. People often imagine the job as endless noise. And certainly, there are plenty of hammer blows before sunset. But between those moments are quiet stretches like this one. Moments when the fire breathes softly. When sunlight reaches farther across the wooden floor. When the village continues its day beyond your doorway, while inside the workshop, time seems to move just a little more slowly. You decide to use the peaceful moment wisely. There are always small things to make. Things the village will need before long. A bundle of fresh nails would be useful. Perhaps a few cooking hooks as well. Not because anyone has ordered them. Simply because experience has taught you that someone always will. You reach beneath the workbench and lift a slender iron rod. It is plain and unremarkable. If someone unfamiliar with blacksmithing saw it lying on the table, they might wonder why you chose such an ordinary piece of metal. Surely, they would think, this is not the beginning of something interesting. But that is the curious thing about medieval craftsmanship. The ordinary was often the most important. Grand swords appeared in stories. Nails held together homes. And families generally preferred having a roof over their heads. You place one end of the rod into the glowing charcoal. The forge welcomes it without ceremony. The fire asks no questions. It simply offers heat. Patiently. Steadily. Exactly as it has since dawn. Once again, you wait. Waiting is woven into nearly every task. Modern life teaches that waiting is something to avoid. Elevators should arrive immediately. Web pages should load in an instant. Food should be ready in minutes. The medieval workshop follows a different philosophy. It suggests, gently but firmly, that some things simply take the time they take. Iron warms when it is ready. Bread rises when it is ready. Trees grow when they are ready. Trying to hurry them rarely improves the result. There is something surprisingly comforting about that idea. Not everything in life needs to happen quickly. When the tip of the iron glows a cheerful orange, you lift it with your tongs and carry it to the anvil. The first few hammer blows are light. Not because the metal is fragile. Quite the opposite. The iron is cooperative now, and there is no reason to argue with it. Tap. Turn. Tap. Turn. Each movement is almost graceful. The square rod slowly becomes narrower near its end. With every gentle strike, the point begins to emerge. Not suddenly. Gradually. Like a pencil being carefully sharpened. There is no dramatic transformation. Only many small ones. If someone walked into the workshop halfway through, they might wonder whether anything had changed at all. Yet every careful blow matters. 100 tiny improvements eventually become something complete. You pause. The iron has begun to lose its bright glow. Already, it is returning to a darker shade of red. The window for shaping it has quietly closed. Back into the fire it goes. This cycle repeats again and again. Fire. Anvil. Fire. Anvil. Heat. Shape. Heat. Shape. There is a gentle rhythm to it. So gentle, in fact, that after many years, your body no longer thinks about the sequence. Your hands simply move from one task to the next as naturally as breathing. It is the sort of knowledge that cannot be learned from reading a book. Only from doing. Again. And again. And again. At last, the point is finished. Now comes the head. You heat the opposite end of the rod and place it into a small opening in the anvil called the hardy hole. With several careful strikes, the end spreads outward ever so slightly. Just enough to prevent the nail from slipping through the wood it will one day hold together. Simple. Practical. Complete. You hold it up for a moment. One nail. Hardly larger than your finger. It has taken several rounds of heating, shaping, and cooling. You smile quietly. Somewhere in your own time, a small cardboard box might contain 500 nails. You could buy them without giving them a second thought. Standing here now, you realize that each one once represented real work. Real time. Real skill. Perhaps the next time you pick up a nail, you'll imagine the patient hands that might once have shaped something just like it. The morning continues. One nail becomes another. Then another. Soon a neat little row begins to form along the edge of the workbench. They are remarkably similar. Not perfectly identical. Handmade things rarely are. If you look closely, one head is just a touch wider. Another point slightly slimmer. These tiny differences do not weaken them. If anything, they quietly remind you that another human being made them. Long before machines could produce thousands every hour, there were steady hands, warm forges, and patient craftsmen. Each object carried a little trace of the person who created it. Outside, the village carries on with its own quiet routines. You hear children laughing as they chase one another across the square. The mill wheel turns steadily in the distance, its gentle rumble blending with birdsong. A shepherd whistles softly to his flock. Someone nearby begins singing while hanging freshly washed linen in the morning breeze. The tune drifts into the workshop, carried gently by the wind. You don't recognize every word. But that hardly matters. The melody is cheerful. And somehow, it fits perfectly with the steady rhythm of your work. The forge, the birds, the turning mill, and the distant singing seem to become one long piece of music. No orchestra. No conductor. Just everyday life. You notice how the sunlight has changed. When you first opened the workshop, it reached only the doorway. Now golden light stretches almost all the way to the anvil. Dust dances lazily through its warm beams. The shadows grow shorter. Morning is quietly becoming midday. You have not looked at a clock once. There isn't one. You simply know. The position of the sun. The warmth in the air. The number of tasks already completed. These are the village's timekeepers. They ask nothing of you except that you pay attention. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be so difficult for many modern people. Not because the work itself is impossible, but because it asks something we rarely practice. Patience. Not patience for 5 minutes or 10, but patience measured in seasons, in years, in thousands of nearly identical mornings. The mastery of this craft does not arrive with one successful repair or one perfectly shaped nail. It grows quietly, almost unnoticed, through countless ordinary days. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly become a master. Instead, one day, after many years, someone new walks into your workshop, watches your calm, steady hands, and thinks, "I hope one day I can work like that." And perhaps you smile, because you remember when your own hands once shook a little too. You place the final nail beside the others and brush a few tiny flakes of iron from the workbench. The forge continues its quiet breathing. The charcoal glows with the same patient warmth it offered at sunrise. Its work, much like yours, is never truly finished. It simply waits for the next piece of iron. Outside, footsteps approach once more. Another customer. Another repair. Another ordinary task that quietly keeps the village moving. And as you rest your hand upon the familiar wooden handle of your hammer, you realize that this simple rhythm, fire, iron, patience, and purpose is becoming as comforting as the steady beat of a heart. The day is still young. There is much more to learn. And you are only beginning to understand the quiet language spoken by the forge. The village arrives. Farmers, bakers, and carpenters. By the time the sun has climbed comfortably above the rooftops, the village is fully awake. The quiet solitude of the early morning has gently given way to something different. Not noise. Not chaos. Simply life. The narrow road outside your workshop is no longer empty. A steady procession of neighbors wanders from one end of the village to the other, each carrying on with the small responsibilities that, together, keep the entire community running. If you stand in your doorway for just a moment, you can watch the rhythm unfold. The baker carries another basket of warm loaves toward the market square. The miller's apprentice struggles with a sack of grain that appears determined to remain exactly where it is. A shepherd guides a slow-moving flock of sheep through the lane with remarkable patience. Two children pause to watch a butterfly drifting lazily above a patch of wildflowers, completely forgetting whatever important mission they had been sent on. One of them suddenly remembers. The other pretends not to. Some things, it seems, never change. Your workshop sits in a fortunate place. Close enough to the center of the village that everyone can reach it easily. Far enough away that the occasional shower of sparks is unlikely to cause anyone unnecessary excitement. From here, you become something of a quiet observer. You rarely need to leave your forge. Instead, the village comes to you. Every person who steps through your doorway brings a small piece of the world outside. Sometimes it is news. Sometimes it is a broken tool. Sometimes it is simply a friendly greeting before continuing on their way. Over time, you begin to realize that the blacksmith's workshop is more than a place where iron is shaped. It is one of the places where the village itself comes together. The next visitor arrives carrying an axe. Not the magnificent battle axe that might appear on the cover of an adventure novel. This one is far more practical. Its wooden handle is smooth from years of use, polished by hard-working hands rather than careful sanding. The iron head has loosened slightly after countless hours spent splitting logs for cooking fires and winter stores. The owner sets it gently upon your workbench. "It started wobbling yesterday," he says with an apologetic smile. As though the axe has somehow inconvenienced you personally. You examine it for only a few moments before nodding. A simple repair. The sort of task you've completed so many times that your hands almost begin working before your thoughts have finished. The man thanks you and steps outside to wait beneath the shade of an old oak tree. There is no expectation that the repair will take only a few minutes. In fact, he seems perfectly content to sit quietly, enjoying the pleasant weather while you work. Perhaps he even welcomes the unexpected chance to rest. There are certainly worse places to spend a morning than beneath an oak tree with birds singing overhead. As the axe warms in the forge, another familiar face appears. This time, it is the village baker. Unlike many of your customers, he arrives empty-handed. Instead, he carries something wrapped carefully inside a clean linen cloth. He places the bundle on your bench with a cheerful grin. For later, he says. Inside rests a small loaf of freshly baked bread, still pleasantly warm. The crust is golden brown, and the comforting aroma immediately fills the workshop. You thank him sincerely. No coins change hands. Not today. Perhaps last month you repaired the long iron peel he uses to slide loaves into his great oven. Perhaps next month you'll sharpen one of his knives. Life in a medieval village often depends as much upon trust and goodwill as it does upon money. Favors have a remarkable way of traveling in circles. Eventually, they almost always find their way home again. The baker lingers for a few moments, warming his hands near the forge despite the growing warmth of the day. You exchange a few quiet words. He mentions that this year's wheat seems healthy. You mention that you've nearly finished replacing several worn horseshoes before the harvest season begins. Neither conversation feels hurried. There are no phones vibrating in anyone's pocket. No meetings waiting to begin. No train to catch. The morning seems generous with its time. And so are the people. Soon another customer arrives. Then another. A carpenter enters carrying 2 chisels whose edges have grown dull after months of shaping sturdy oak beams. Behind him comes an elderly woman with a bent cooking hook that has served her kitchen faithfully for longer than either of you can remember. A cooper the craftsman who makes barrels follows with several iron hoops that need careful adjustment before they can fit freshly made wooden casks. Each visitor brings something different. Yet the conversations often begin the same way. A friendly greeting. A smile. A few words about the weather. Perhaps a quiet observation that the apples seem especially plentiful this year. Or that the river has been running lower than usual. Simple conversations. Gentle conversations. The sort that ask for nothing except a willingness to listen. You begin to understand something that would surprise many people from your own time. The blacksmith is not only a craftsman. He is also a listener. While your hands shape iron, your ears quietly collect stories. A shepherd mentions that twins were born to one of his ewes. The miller's wife proudly tells you her youngest grandson has begun learning his letters from the village priest. Someone has spotted the first swallows returning after winter. Someone else believes rain will arrive before the week's end because the sparrows have been flying unusually low. Whether that prediction proves true hardly matters. It gives people something pleasant to discuss while waiting. And waiting, here, is simply part of life. The forge continues its steady breathing. Each time you work the bellows, the charcoal glows brighter, as though happily participating in every conversation. The hammer rises. Falls. Rises again. Each strike joins the background music of the village. Before long, no one really notices it anymore. The sound has become as ordinary as birdsong or the turning of the mill wheel. Children playing nearby scarcely glance toward the workshop. To them, the ringing of iron is simply one of the sounds that tells them they are home. Imagine growing up with that. Instead of traffic outside your window, you wake each morning to birds, church bells, and the steady song of a blacksmith at work. It is a rather comforting thought. Around midday, the warmth inside the workshop begins to deepen. The forge has been burning steadily for hours now. You wipe a bead of perspiration from your forehead with your sleeve. The fire gives generously. It also asks for respect. Working beside it all day requires a quiet endurance that slowly becomes part of your life. Your face grows accustomed to the heat. Your hands grow accustomed to the weight of the hammer. Your ears grow accustomed to the ringing of iron. None of these changes happen quickly. They arrive so gradually that you scarcely notice them. Until one day, someone new steps inside, feels the warmth for only a few minutes, and wonders aloud. How do you stand it? You smile. Because you once wondered exactly the same thing. Years ago. Before the forge became as familiar as an old friend. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be more difficult than it first appears. Not because the work is always difficult. Some of it is wonderfully simple. Not because every day brings disaster. Most days do not. The challenge lies in the quiet consistency. Every morning, the forge must be lit. Every day, someone needs something repaired. Every evening, tomorrow's work quietly waits its turn. There are no shortcuts. No weekends away. No holiday when iron politely decides not to wear out. The village depends upon steady hands. Day after day. Season after season. Year after year. And somehow, the forge is the village gathering place. As the morning stretches gently toward the afternoon, you begin to notice something curious about your workshop. People do not always come here because something is broken. Sometimes, they simply come. An elderly man pauses at your doorway during his daily walk, leaning comfortably on a polished wooden walking stick. He has no tools to repair. No horses to shoe. No urgent business at all. He simply offers a cheerful nod. Morning. You return the greeting. He watches the forge for a minute or two, warming his hands near the doorway even though the day itself has grown pleasantly mild. After a short conversation about the weather, he continues on his way. It is such a small exchange that neither of you will remember the exact words tomorrow. Yet somehow, it makes the day feel just a little brighter. Not long afterward, two farmers arrive together. One carries a cracked sickle. The other carries nothing at all. He has simply accompanied his friend for the walk. While you examine the sickle, the two men sit upon a sturdy bench outside your workshop. They begin discussing this year's barley. One believes the harvest will be especially good. The other suspects a few more weeks of rain would help. Neither sounds particularly concerned. Farming teaches patience. The weather has never been known to accept advice. They laugh quietly together, enjoying the conversation more than reaching any conclusion. Sometimes, sharing an opinion is enough. The forge crackles steadily behind you. Its warmth spreads through the workshop like afternoon sunshine. You add another careful scoop of charcoal. The fresh fuel settles gently onto the glowing bed of coals, and within moments, the familiar orange light grows brighter once again. The fire seems content. Not hurried. Not fierce. Simply dependable. Much like the people who visit your shop. A young apprentice from the carpenter's workshop appears carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. His master has sent him to collect the sharpened chisels from earlier in the day. The boy cannot be more than 13 or 14. He thanks you politely before carefully unwrapping each tool. As he examines their freshly honed edges, his eyes grow wide with admiration. To him, these chisels look almost new. He runs a thumb carefully, not too carefully, along the flat side of one blade before quickly deciding that perhaps touching sharp edges is not the best idea after all. You smile to yourself. Every apprentice collects knowledge one careful lesson at a time, preferably without collecting too many bandaged fingers along the way. Before leaving, the boy hesitates. May I watch for a moment? You nod. There is always something to learn. He stands quietly near the doorway as you heat another small piece of iron. He watches how you turn it inside the coals, how you judge its color, how your hands seem to know exactly when it is ready. His gaze follows every movement, not because anything dramatic is happening. Quite the opposite. He is discovering that skill often looks surprisingly calm. From a distance, mastery appears effortless. Only years later does one realize how much quiet practice hides beneath that effortless appearance. Perhaps someday, he will remember this morning. Not because of anything remarkable you said, but because he saw patience in action. Outside, the village square grows a little busier. Market day is still several mornings away, yet small exchanges happen every day. A basket of eggs changes hands. Fresh herbs are traded for a length of woven cloth. A potter carefully carries several newly fired bowls toward a nearby cottage. The sound of conversation drifts gently through the open doorway. No one seems to speak loudly. There is no need. The village is small enough that everyone is already close. News travels comfortably on ordinary voices, sometimes even faster than ordinary feet. Before long, the village priest walks past. He pauses just outside your workshop and admires a newly finished iron candle holder resting upon the bench. It turned out well, he says. You thank him. The candle holder will soon find its place inside the little stone church, where it will hold gentle flames during evening prayers through every season of the year. You think about that for a moment. Most of the things you make will quietly disappear into everyday life. A hinge becomes part of a door. A nail disappears inside a wall. A horseshoe vanishes beneath a horse's hoof. People rarely notice them afterward. Yet they continue doing their work every single day. There is something rather beautiful about creating objects that ask for no attention. They simply help. As another piece of iron warms in the forge, you unwrap the loaf of bread the baker left earlier. It is still soft in the center. The crust gives a satisfying little crackle as you break it apart. You sit on the stool beside the doorway, enjoying a few peaceful moments before returning to work. The warm bread needs nothing more. No butter. No sweet jam. It is fresh enough to be enjoyed exactly as it is. From where you sit, you can see nearly the entire village street. A little girl carefully carries water from the well, concentrating so hard that only a few drops spill over the rim of the bucket. An old cat stretches lazily in a patch of sunlight before deciding that continuing its nap is a much wiser use of the afternoon. 3 ducks waddle past with complete confidence, apparently convinced that they are conducting very important business. No one argues with them. That seems sensible. One rarely wins an argument with ducks. The hours pass gently. You notice that people often linger here longer than necessary. A repaired tool is ready, yet its owner stays another few minutes. Someone delivering charcoal pauses for a friendly conversation. A traveler asks for directions, then accepts a cup of cool water before continuing his journey. The workshop has become something more than a place of labor. It has become one of the village's meeting places. There is no official sign announcing it. No one planned it. It simply happened. Warm places have always drawn people together. A hearth inside a home. A bakery before sunrise. A forge glowing softly beside the road. The warmth invites conversation almost as naturally as the light attracts moths after sunset. you begin to realize that this is another part of being a medieval blacksmith that many modern people never imagine. Yes, you shape iron. But you also shape relationships. You know whose son has begun an apprenticeship. You know which family welcomed a new baby. You know whose roof survived the winter storms and whose wagon still needs another wheel. Not because you ask. Because people naturally tell their stories while waiting. Without intending to, you become one of the quiet threads holding the village together. Not through great speeches. Not through authority. Simply by being present. Every day. Every season. Every year. The afternoon sunlight grows softer now, casting long golden beams across the floor of the workshop. The anvil gleams where countless hammer blows have polished its face smooth. Your hammer rests beside it for a brief moment, its wooden handle worn silky by years of faithful use. You place another piece of iron into the fire and watch it slowly begin to glow. The transformation never grows old. Dark gray becomes deep red. Deep red becomes bright orange. The fire continues teaching the same lesson it taught yesterday. The same lesson it will teach tomorrow. Good work cannot be rushed. It asks for attention. For patience. For care. Perhaps this is yet another reason why you might struggle to survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because the forge is too hot. Or the hammer too heavy. Though both certainly demand respect. The greater challenge is learning to live at the pace of the village itself. To measure your day not by notifications or appointments, but by the changing light across the workshop floor. To recognize your neighbors not as strangers passing by, but as familiar faces whose lives quietly intertwine with your own. To find satisfaction not in finishing everything, but in completing one honest task after another. It is a slower way of living. A quieter one. And as the forge hums softly beside you, and another friendly voice calls out a cheerful greeting from the road, you begin to understand why the blacksmith's workshop is remembered not only as a place where iron was shaped, but as one of the warmest hearts of the village itself. A day of endless hammering. The rhythm of iron. By early afternoon, the village has settled into its quiet routine. The excitement of the morning has faded, replaced by a comfortable steadiness that seems to wrap itself around every cottage, every garden, and every winding lane. The baker has sold most of his bread. The shepherd has led his flock into distant meadows. Children who had been racing through the village square now sit beneath the shade of an old oak tree, inventing games that require little more than imagination and a few smooth stones. Even the birds seem content to sing a little more softly beneath the warmth of the sun. Inside your workshop, however, the day is only halfway finished. The forge still burns with its patient orange glow. The charcoal continues its gentle crackling. And your faithful hammer waits exactly where you left it only moments ago. Its smooth wooden handle fits comfortably into your hand, polished by years of steady work until it feels less like a tool and more like an old companion. There is something reassuring about familiar things. A favorite chair. A well-worn book. A path you've walked so often that your feet seem to remember it without asking your mind for directions. The hammer has become one of those familiar things. Another piece of iron waits beside the forge. Today it will become a new door hinge for a cottage at the edge of the village. Nothing grand. Nothing that will be admired by travelers passing through. Most visitors will never notice it at all. And that is perfectly fine. The best hinges are often the ones nobody thinks about. They open. They close. Year after year. Quietly doing exactly what they were made to do. There is a gentle lesson hidden inside such ordinary objects. Not everything meaningful needs to be remarkable. Sometimes the greatest achievement is simply being dependable. you place the iron into the glowing charcoal once more. The familiar sequence begins again. Wait. Watch. Listen. The forge offers no surprises. It behaves today exactly as it behaved yesterday. It rewards patience today exactly as it rewarded patience last year. There is comfort in such reliability. The world outside may change with every season. The fire remains wonderfully honest. Treat it well, and it responds in kind. Ignore it, and it quietly reminds you who is truly in charge. Soon the iron reaches the rich orange color you've learned to recognize. You lift it carefully with your tongs. Tiny flakes of dark scale drift gently toward the floor like little pieces of burnt autumn leaves. The metal rests upon the anvil. You raise your hammer. Then, clang. The sound rings through the workshop. Clear. Steady. Confident. Another strike follows. Clang. Then another. And another. Soon the workshop fills with a rhythm older than memory itself. Clang. Turn the iron. Clang. A slight adjustment. Clang. Turn again. The movements flow together so naturally that they almost resemble a dance. Not a hurried dance. A slow one. One learned through years of repetition. Every strike has a purpose. Every pause has a purpose too. Watching an experienced blacksmith at work is rather like watching someone row a boat across a calm lake. Nothing appears rushed. Nothing appears wasted. Each movement simply follows the one before it. If someone counted every hammer blow you make during a single day, they would quickly lose interest. Not because there are too few. Because there are far too many. Hundreds become thousands. Thousands become tens of thousands over the course of weeks. Then months. Then years. By the time you reach middle age, you may have swung your hammer millions of times. It is an astonishing thought. Not one mighty swing. Not one legendary effort. Simply countless ordinary ones. Quietly added together. Much like drops of rain filling a river. Perhaps this is one of history's favorite secrets. Great craftsmanship rarely comes from dramatic moments. It grows from ordinary days repeated with care. One careful nail. One repaired hinge. One sharpened chisel. One horseshoe. Again. And again. Until years quietly transform ordinary effort into extraordinary skill. There is no shortcut hidden somewhere inside the workshop. If there were, every apprentice would surely spend the afternoon looking for it. Instead, the shortcut turns out to be patience, which is rather inconvenient, because patience cannot be borrowed, only practiced. The rhythm continues. Clang, clang, clang. After a while, you begin to notice something curious. Your breathing has settled into the same pace as your work. The hammer rises as you inhale. It falls as you exhale. The bellows breathe between tasks. Even the fire seems to pulse gently alongside your movements. Everything inside the workshop has found a shared rhythm. Without realizing it, you've become part of it. The forge is no longer something separate from you. The anvil no longer feels like an object. Together, they create a steady routine that quietly carries you through the afternoon. Perhaps this is why experienced blacksmiths often appear so calm while working. Their bodies are no longer arguing with the rhythm. They have learned to trust it. Outside, a soft breeze stirs the leaves of the great oak tree. Sunlight flickers across the doorway in shifting patterns. A swallow swoops low over the village road before disappearing toward the fields. The familiar scent of warm pine drifts in from somewhere beyond the cottages. Someone nearby begins humming while tending a vegetable garden. The melody wanders into your workshop before drifting away again with the wind. You do not know the tune, but somehow it fits perfectly. The steady ringing of the hammer becomes another instrument joining the afternoon's quiet music. Birdsong, rustling leaves, the distant turning of the mill wheel. Your hammer. None of them compete with one another. Each simply contributes its own gentle voice. You pause for a moment to return the hinge to the fire. The iron has cooled once again. There is no frustration in this. Only acceptance. Everything has its season. The iron is ready when it is ready, just as the bread is ready when the baker removes it from the oven, just as apples are ready when autumn decides. The medieval world asks you to cooperate with time rather than conquer it. Perhaps that is one of its greatest lessons. As the hinge glows once more beneath the charcoal, you rest your hands upon the smooth edge of the anvil. Its surface bears tiny marks left by generations of work. Perhaps your father stood here before you. Perhaps his father before him. The anvil remembers them all. Each careful strike has left the smallest trace. Not enough to change its shape, but enough to remind you that good work often outlives the person who performs it. Long after today's conversations have faded. Long after today's bread has been eaten. Long after today's footprints have disappeared from the village road. The hinge you are making may still quietly open and close a cottage door for many years to come. Someone, perhaps not yet even born, may one day place their hand upon it without giving a single thought to the blacksmith who shaped it on this peaceful afternoon. And somehow, that feels entirely right. You lift your hammer once more. The glowing iron waits patiently. The forge breathes softly behind you. Outside, the village continues its quiet afternoon. And inside the workshop, the timeless rhythm begins again. Clang. Pause. Clang. Pause. Why your modern arms would protest. The afternoon sun now hangs high above the village. Golden light pours through the open doorway, warming the wooden floorboards until they almost seem to glow. Outside, the breeze has grown quieter. Even the birds appear to have decided that the warmest part of the day is better suited to gentle singing than energetic flying. Inside the workshop, however, very little has changed. The forge is still burning. The charcoal is still glowing. The hammer is still rising. And still falling. If someone had wandered into your workshop only a few moments ago, they might think they were seeing exactly the same scene as they would have seen an hour earlier. In many ways, they would be right. That is the nature of this craft. It is built upon repetition. Not dull repetition. Comforting repetition. Like waves meeting the shore. Like rain falling softly upon a roof. Like the steady ticking of an old clock. The rhythm remains the same. Only the work itself changes. You finish shaping the door hinge and set it carefully aside to cool. Soon, it will leave your workshop and become part of someone's home. Perhaps a family will open that door every morning for the next 20 years. Perhaps children not yet born will race through it one summer afternoon. The hinge will never receive praise. It will simply do its work. Quietly. Faithfully. There is something deeply satisfying about creating objects that disappear into everyday life. You roll your shoulders gently. Not because anything hurts. Not yet. Simply because they have been working without pause since before sunrise. It is a small movement. One so familiar that you scarcely think about it anymore. Your fingers flex around the handle of the hammer. Your wrists loosen. Your neck turns slowly from side to side. These tiny adjustments have become part of your day. The body has a quiet way of asking for little moments of kindness. Experienced craftsmen learn to listen before those whispers become complaints. Imagine, for a moment, that you have traveled back through time. You step confidently into this workshop. You have watched countless videos. Read fascinating books. Perhaps you've even visited a historical museum where a smiling blacksmith demonstrated his craft for 15 entertaining minutes. You think to yourself, how difficult can it really be? The hammer doesn't seem especially heavy. The forge is certainly warm, but manageable. You've gone to the gym before. You feel prepared. For the first 10 minutes. You probably are. The first few swings feel satisfying. Each strike sends a bright little shower of sparks dancing across the anvil. You smile. This is enjoyable. Perhaps even relaxing. After 20 minutes, your shoulders begin to notice the weight of the hammer. After 40 minutes, your forearms quietly ask whether you might consider a short break. After an hour, you discover muscles in places you had never previously introduced yourself to. By the second hour, you begin looking thoughtfully at the nearest stool. Not because you are lazy, simply because standing suddenly seems like a very ambitious hobby. Meanwhile, the medieval blacksmith standing beside you has barely noticed that the morning ended. This is not because he is stronger in every possible way, though years of work have certainly given him remarkable endurance. It is because his body has been shaped by repetition. Day after day, season after season, the muscles in his hands have adapted. His shoulders have adapted. His back has adapted. Even the small muscles that help him grip a pair of heavy tongs without thinking have quietly grown stronger over the years. None of it happened quickly. It happened one ordinary day at a time. The human body is wonderfully patient. Given enough time, it learns almost any honest task. You watch your own hands for a moment. The skin across your palms is thick and firm. Not rough everywhere. Only where the tools rest. Years of holding wooden handles have left gentle calluses that protect your skin without stealing the sensitivity from your fingertips. You can still feel tiny differences in the surface of iron. You can still notice the smallest vibration traveling through the hammer after each strike. Your hands are strong. But more importantly, they have become attentive. They understand their work. A gentle breeze wanders through the open doorway. It carries with it the scent of fresh hay drying in nearby fields. Somewhere beyond the cottages, someone has begun gathering herbs. The sweet fragrance of mint and wild thyme drifts into the workshop before quietly blending with the familiar smell of charcoal and warm iron. It is an unusual combination. Smoke. Fresh bread from the baker. Sun-warmed wood. Leather. Wild flowers. If someone could somehow preserve the smell of a peaceful medieval afternoon inside a little glass bottle, it might smell very much like this. Another customer arrives. Not because something has broken today. Simply because he is thinking ahead. He places several horseshoes upon your bench. They'll need replacing before long, he says. There is no hurry. Those four words sound wonderfully unfamiliar to modern ears. There is no hurry. How often do you hear them? Not next-day delivery. Not immediate response. Not urgent. Just whenever you have time. You thank him and place the horseshoes neatly beside tomorrow's work. The village understands something that is easy to forget. Good work is worth waiting for. The hours continue slipping by with almost surprising gentleness. You no longer notice every individual hammer blow. Instead, they blend together into one long, peaceful rhythm. Your breathing follows naturally. Your feet shift comfortably across the worn wooden floor. The bellows sigh softly. The fire answers. The anvil rings. Again. And again. There is almost a meditative quality to it. Not because the work is easy, but because your attention remains completely focused on one simple task. One piece of iron. One hammer. One careful movement at a time. The rest of the world fades quietly into the background. Perhaps this is something your own time has almost forgotten. There is a special kind of peace that comes from doing one thing. And only one thing. When you shape iron, you shape iron. You are not also answering letters, reading messages, checking the weather, planning tomorrow, or wondering what someone on the other side of the world has just eaten for lunch. Your entire attention belongs to the glowing piece of metal resting upon the anvil. Oddly enough, that simplicity feels restful, even while the work itself remains demanding. As the afternoon slowly begins its journey toward evening, the sunlight changes once more. The bright white light of midday softens into warmer shades of amber. Long shadows begin stretching across the village road. The great oak tree outside offers a little more shade with each passing hour. A pair of sparrows land upon your workshop roof, chirping quietly to one another before darting away again. The forge, meanwhile, burns as steadily as ever. It does not care what hour it is, only whether it has enough charcoal. There is something admirable about such simple priorities. You lean the hammer gently against the anvil and take a long, slow breath. Not because you are exhausted, though the work has certainly asked much of your body. You pause because experience has taught you that even the busiest craftsman benefits from a moment of stillness. You listen. The fire crackles softly. The wind brushes through the leaves outside. A wagon rolls slowly along the distant road. Somewhere nearby, church bells ring the passing hour, their gentle notes floating across the village like ripples spreading over a quiet pond. For a brief moment, everything seems perfectly balanced. The warmth of the forge, the cool breeze at the doorway, the quiet voices outside, the familiar weight of the hammer resting beside you. It is an ordinary afternoon, one that history will never write about. No famous visitor will arrive. No grand celebration will interrupt the day. And yet, it is precisely afternoons like this, repeated thousands of times over a lifetime, that reveal why you probably couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because the work is beyond human strength, but because it quietly asks for something rarer. Steadiness. The willingness to greet each morning with the same patience. To shape one more piece of iron. To help one more neighbor. To trust that ordinary work, done well and done kindly, is enough. The forge glows softly beside you. The village carries on beyond the doorway. Why your modern arms would protest. The afternoon sun now hangs high above the village. Golden light pours through the open doorway, warming the wooden floorboards until they almost seem to glow. Outside, the breeze has grown quieter. Even the birds appear to have decided that the warmest part of the day is better suited to gentle singing than energetic flying. Inside the workshop, however, very little has changed. The forge is still burning. The charcoal is still glowing. The hammer is still rising. And still falling. If someone had wandered into your workshop only a few moments ago, they might think they were seeing exactly the same scene as they would have seen an hour earlier. In many ways, they would be right. That is the nature of this craft. It is built upon repetition. Not dull repetition. Comforting repetition. Like waves meeting the shore. Like rain falling softly upon a roof. Like the steady ticking of an old clock. The rhythm remains the same. Only the work itself changes. You finish shaping the door hinge and set it carefully aside to cool. Soon, it will leave your workshop and become part of someone's home. Perhaps a family will open that door every morning for the next 20 years. Perhaps children not yet born will race through it one summer afternoon. The hinge will never receive praise. It will simply do its work. Quietly. Faithfully. There is something deeply satisfying about creating objects that disappear into everyday life. You roll your shoulders gently. Not because anything hurts. Not yet. Simply because they have been working without pause since before sunrise. It is a small movement. One so familiar that you scarcely think about it anymore. Your fingers flex around the handle of the hammer. Your wrists loosen. Your neck turns slowly from side to side. These tiny adjustments have become part of your day. The body has a quiet way of asking for little moments of kindness. Experienced craftsmen learn to listen before those whispers become complaints. Imagine, for a moment, that you have traveled back through time. You step confidently into this workshop. You have watched countless videos. Read fascinating books. Perhaps you've even visited a historical museum where a smiling blacksmith demonstrated his craft for 15 entertaining minutes. You think to yourself, how difficult can it really be? The hammer doesn't seem especially heavy. The forge is certainly warm, but manageable. You've gone to the gym before. You feel prepared. For the first 10 minutes. You probably are. The first few swings feel satisfying. Each strike sends a bright little shower of sparks dancing across the anvil. You smile. This is enjoyable. Perhaps even relaxing. After 20 minutes, your shoulders begin to notice the weight of the hammer. After 40 minutes, your forearms quietly ask whether you might consider a short break. After an hour, you discover muscles in places you had never previously introduced yourself to. By the second hour, you begin looking thoughtfully at the nearest stool. Not because you are lazy. Simply because standing suddenly seems like a very ambitious hobby. Meanwhile, the medieval blacksmith standing beside you has barely noticed that the morning ended. This is not because he is stronger in every possible way. Though years of work have certainly given him remarkable endurance. It is because his body has been shaped by repetition. Day after day. Season after season. The muscles in his hands have adapted. His shoulders have adapted. His back has adapted. Even the small muscles that help him grip a pair of heavy tongs without thinking have quietly grown stronger over the years. None of it happened quickly. It happened one ordinary day at a time. The human body is wonderfully patient. Given enough time, it learns almost any honest task. You watch your own hands for a moment. The skin across your palms is thick and firm. Not rough everywhere. Only where the tools rest. Years of holding wooden handles have left gentle calluses that protect your skin without stealing the sensitivity from your fingertips. You can still feel tiny differences in the surface of iron. You can still notice the smallest vibration traveling through the hammer after each strike. Your hands are strong. But more importantly, they have become attentive. They understand their work. A gentle breeze wanders through the open doorway. It carries with it the scent of fresh hay drying in nearby fields. Somewhere beyond the cottages, someone has begun gathering herbs. The sweet fragrance of mint and wild thyme drifts into the workshop before quietly blending with the familiar smell of charcoal and warm iron. It is an unusual combination. Smoke. Fresh bread from the baker. Sun-warmed wood. Leather. Wild flowers. If someone could somehow preserve the smell of a peaceful medieval afternoon inside a little glass bottle, it might smell very much like this. Another customer arrives. Not because something has broken today. Simply because he is thinking ahead. He places several horseshoes upon your bench. They'll need replacing before long, he says. There is no hurry. Those four words sound wonderfully unfamiliar to modern ears. There is no hurry. How often do you hear them? Not next-day delivery. Not immediate response. Not urgent. Just whenever you have time. You thank him and place the horseshoes neatly beside tomorrow's work. The village understands something that is easy to forget. Good work is worth waiting for. The hours continue slipping by with almost surprising gentleness. You no longer notice every individual hammer blow. Instead, they blend together into one long, peaceful rhythm. Your breathing follows naturally. Your feet shift comfortably across the worn wooden floor. The bellows sigh softly. The fire answers. The anvil rings. Again. And again. There is almost a meditative quality to it. Not because the work is easy, but because your attention remains completely focused on one simple task. One piece of iron. One hammer. One careful movement at a time. The rest of the world fades quietly into the background. Perhaps this is something your own time has almost forgotten. There is a special kind of peace that comes from doing one thing. And only one thing. When you shape iron, you shape iron. You are not also answering letters, reading messages, checking the weather, planning tomorrow, or wondering what someone on the other side of the world has just eaten for lunch. Your entire attention belongs to the glowing piece of metal resting upon the anvil. Oddly enough, that simplicity feels restful, even while the work itself remains demanding. As the afternoon slowly begins its journey toward evening, the sunlight changes once more. The bright white light of midday softens into warmer shades of amber. Long shadows begin stretching across the village road. The great oak tree outside offers a little more shade with each passing hour. A pair of sparrows land upon your workshop roof, chirping quietly to one another before darting away again. The forge, meanwhile, burns as steadily as ever. It does not care what hour it is, only whether it has enough charcoal. There is something admirable about such simple priorities. You lean the hammer gently against the anvil and take a long, slow breath. Not because you are exhausted, though the work has certainly asked much of your body. You pause because experience has taught you that even the busiest craftsman benefits from a moment of stillness. You listen. The fire crackles softly. The wind brushes through the leaves outside. A wagon rolls slowly along the distant road. Somewhere nearby, church bells ring the passing hour, their gentle notes floating across the village like ripples spreading over a quiet pond. For a brief moment, everything seems perfectly balanced. The warmth of the forge. The cool breeze at the doorway. The quiet voices outside. The familiar weight of the hammer resting beside you. It is an ordinary afternoon. One that history will never write about. No famous visitor will arrive. No grand celebration will interrupt the day. And yet, It is precisely afternoons like this, repeated thousands of times over a lifetime, that reveal why you probably couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because the work is beyond human strength, but because it quietly asks for something rarer. Steadiness. The willingness to greet each morning with the same patience. To shape one more piece of iron. To help one more neighbor. To trust that ordinary work, done well and done kindly, is enough. The forge glows softly beside you. The village carries on beyond the doorway. Horses, wagons, and travelers. Fitting new horseshoes. The afternoon slips quietly toward evening. The sunlight has softened now, trading the bright brilliance of midday for a warm golden glow that settles gently over the village. Long shadows stretch across the road outside your workshop. The old oak tree beside the lane casts a patchwork of moving shade upon the ground, its leaves whispering softly whenever the breeze wanders through. The forge still burns faithfully. Its heart glows a rich orange beneath fresh charcoal, and every so often a tiny spark drifts upward before disappearing into the chimney. You have been beside this fire since before sunrise. And yet, the day is not quite finished. There is still one visitor expected. As though on cue, you hear it before you see it. Not the rider. The horse. A slow, steady rhythm reaches your ears. Clop. 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 The sound is gentle against the packed earth of the village road. Neither hurried nor reluctant. Simply steady. It grows a little louder with each passing moment until a broad chestnut horse appears around the bend, led carefully by its owner. The farmer raises a hand in greeting. Good afternoon. You smile and return the gesture. Beside him, the horse continues walking with quiet dignity, entirely unconcerned that it has become the center of your afternoon's work. Now, if your experience with horses comes mostly from films or storybooks, you might imagine them as graceful companions who instinctively understand exactly what humans are trying to accomplish. The horse standing before you has a slightly different opinion. It understands three things quite clearly: grass, comfort, and wondering why everyone keeps touching its feet. To be fair, that is not an unreasonable question. If someone unexpectedly began examining your shoes every few weeks, you might also become curious. Fortunately, this particular horse has visited your workshop many times before. It knows the routine. More or less. It gives a patient sigh, lowers its head slightly, and begins searching hopefully for an interesting patch of grass growing beside the fence. Its priorities remain admirably consistent. The farmer explains that one of the horseshoes has become worn after weeks of pulling a heavy wagon between nearby villages. There is no emergency. The horse is walking comfortably enough. But waiting too long would only make the next repair more difficult. This is another quiet lesson the medieval world teaches. Good maintenance is far easier than urgent repairs. A loose horseshoe is a simple problem. A lame horse during harvest season. That is quite another matter. So today, while everything is still calm, you quietly take care of tomorrow's worries. You walk slowly around the horse, observing the way it stands. Years of experience have taught you that animals often reveal small details without saying a word. Not that horses say many words in the first place. Mostly they communicate through ears, eyes, posture, and the occasional thoughtful snort. This one seems relaxed. Its ears turn lazily toward nearby sounds. Its breathing is slow. Its tail swishes gently now and then, politely reminding a determined fly that it is no longer welcome. Satisfied, you kneel beside one of its front legs. There is no sudden movement. No dramatic struggle. You place one hand gently against the horse's shoulder before running it slowly downward until you reach the leg. The horse understands. It shifts its weight ever so slightly, then lifts its hoof. Not because you are stronger. Certainly not. A full-grown horse outweighs you many times over. Instead, this is cooperation. Built through familiarity. Built through trust. It is one of the quiet partnerships that has connected people and horses for thousands of years. You rest the hoof carefully upon a sturdy wooden stand. Now, for the first time, you can clearly examine the horseshoe. Its edges have become smooth from countless miles along dirt roads and rocky paths. The iron still holds firmly, but not for much longer. You reach for a small hammer and a pair of pincers. With slow, practiced movements, you begin removing the old nails one by one. Each comes free with a soft metallic click. Nothing is forced. Nothing is rushed. The horse remains surprisingly patient. Occasionally, it turns its head to glance at you, as though politely checking whether everything is progressing according to plan. You quietly assure it that it is. Whether the horse believes you is another matter entirely. Still, it seems willing to continue. With the old shoe removed, you take a moment simply to inspect the hoof itself. Many people imagine horseshoes as protecting the hoof in the same way a boot protects a human foot. The comparison is not entirely perfect. A horse's hoof continues growing throughout its life, much like your fingernails. From time to time, it must be carefully trimmed and shaped before a new shoe can be fitted. This requires a calm hand. Too little trimming, and the shoe may not fit comfortably. Too much. Well, that would be rather unfair to the horse. You work slowly, patiently. Tiny curls of hoof fall gently to the ground. The horse barely seems to notice. In fact, it appears far more interested in a nearby bird hopping confidently across the yard. Perhaps the bird has discovered something fascinating. Or perhaps birds simply enjoy appearing very busy. Either explanation seems equally possible. The new horseshoe rests nearby upon your workbench. Earlier that morning, you had already shaped it in anticipation of visits like this one. Even so, no two horses are exactly alike. Each hoof has its own gentle curve, its own small differences. You place the shoe against the hoof. Close, but not perfect. Back to the forge. Only for a moment. The iron slips into the glowing charcoal, where it begins warming once again. The forge welcomes another familiar task. It has spent the entire day helping the village. Now it quietly prepares to help one more traveler continue safely along the road. There is something comforting about that thought. The fire asks for no praise. It simply keeps doing its work. As the shoe reaches the proper warmth, you carry it back to the anvil. Only a few careful strikes are needed. Clang. A tiny adjustment. Clang. Another. The curve becomes just a little smoother. Just a little closer to the shape nature has already given the horse. You test the fit again. Better. Almost there. One final adjustment. Perfect. Not because it is mathematically exact, but because experience tells you it is right. Sometimes, after enough years, your hands know before your mind finds the words. The farmer watches quietly from nearby. Neither of you feels the need for constant conversation. The comfortable silence between craftsmen and farmers is one earned through many seasons of working together. Both of you understand something very simple. Good work deserves your full attention. Words can wait. The breeze says enough for everyone. It carries the scent of drying wheat from the fields beyond the village. Somewhere in the distance, a cuckoo calls from the edge of the woodland. The church bell marks another passing hour. Its gentle tone drifts across rooftops before fading into the warm afternoon air. Time continues moving. Never quickly. Never slowly. Simply as it always has. At last, the new horseshoe is ready. You position it carefully against the freshly prepared hoof. Everything feels balanced. Comfortable. Just as it should. The small iron nails wait neatly beside your tools, ready for the final stage of the work. You pause for one quiet moment before beginning. The horse stands calmly. The farmer smiles patiently. The forge glows behind you. Golden sunlight fills the doorway. It is another ordinary task. One repeated thousands of times by blacksmiths across countless villages. Yet every successful fitting means another safe journey. Another wagon carrying grain. Another family reaching home before nightfall. Another quiet day continuing exactly as it should. And perhaps that is why this work matters so much. Not because it changes the world all at once, but because it gently helps the world keep moving, one careful hoof at a time. Stories from distant roads. The new horseshoe rests neatly against the horse's hoof. You reach for the small iron nails waiting beside your anvil. They are not ordinary nails. At least, not in the way a modern carpenter might imagine them. Each one has been shaped with a very particular purpose. Its head is slightly broader. Its shaft is carefully tapered. Its point is designed to follow the natural path through the outer wall of the hoof before emerging harmlessly near the edge. To someone unfamiliar with horseshoeing, the process might seem rather alarming. But the horse stands quietly. It has experienced this many times before. It knows that the careful tapping of your hammer is simply another part of an ordinary afternoon. You position the first nail. A gentle tap. Then another. The nail slides into place with surprising ease. The horse shifts its weight ever so slightly before settling once again. You continue with calm, measured movements. One nail. Then the next. Each carefully placed. Each checked before moving on. There is no prize for finishing quickly. Only satisfaction in finishing well. By the time the final nail is secured, the horseshoe feels as though it has always belonged there. You gently lower the horse's hoof back to the ground. It stands for a moment. Then takes several slow steps across the yard. Clop. 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 The rhythm is smooth. Balanced. Comfortable. Exactly what you hoped for. The farmer nods with quiet approval. There are no grand celebrations. No applause. Just two people sharing the simple satisfaction of a job completed with care. While the farmer settles his payment, another wagon appears along the road. It is larger than most. Its wheels are coated with a fine layer of pale dust collected over many miles of travel. Several sturdy barrels are tied securely in the back beneath a canvas covering. The horse pulling the wagon walks with the slow confidence of an animal that has traveled this road many times before. The driver brings the wagon to a gentle stop outside your workshop. He removes his broad hat and smiles. "Good afternoon, Smith." His voice carries the relaxed tone of someone who has spent many peaceful hours alone on country roads. You recognize him. Not because he lives in your village. Because he passes through every few weeks, carrying goods from towns beyond the nearby hills. Travelers bring something unusual into a small village. Stories. Some carry cloth. Others carry salt. Some bring fine pottery or carefully woven baskets. But almost all of them bring news. Not hurried news. not the kind that flashes across a screen in an instant. News that has traveled at the speed of walking horses and turning wagon wheels. Sometimes it arrives days after the event. Sometimes weeks. No one seems particularly troubled by that. The story is still worth hearing. The traveler climbs down from his wagon and stretches with a quiet sigh. Even sitting for many hours can leave the body asking politely for a change of position. He pats the neck of his horse. "You've earned your rest." The horse seems to agree. It lowers its head immediately toward a patch of fresh grass growing beside the road. Clearly, this has been the plan all along. You lead the animal toward a bucket of cool water waiting near the workshop. It drinks slowly. Not greedily. Just gratefully. Long journeys require many small pauses. People are not so different. The traveler examines one of his wagon wheels. "Nothing serious," he says. "I heard a little rattle this morning." You crouch beside the wheel. The iron tire remains firmly in place. The wooden spokes are sound. Only one small fastening has loosened slightly after many miles over uneven roads. A simple repair. The kind that prevents larger problems later. You smile. The village seems determined to offer only sensible jobs today. There is something pleasantly reassuring about that. While you work, the traveler begins sharing news from the neighboring market town. A new stone bridge is finally nearing completion after several summers of careful construction. The old wooden crossing had served faithfully for many years, but spring floods often made the journey uncertain. The new bridge, he says, should last generations. You picture it quietly in your mind. Great blocks of pale stone arching over a gentle river. Strong enough to carry countless wagons, horses, and travelers yet to come. Some crafts last for years. Others for centuries. It is a comforting thought. He tells you about an unusually large market held several days ago. Merchants arrived from distant villages with colorful wool, polished pottery, beeswax candles, and fragrant herbs gathered from mountain slopes. Musicians played simple melodies in the town square while children chased one another between the market stalls. Someone roasted chestnuts over glowing coals. Someone else sold honey so clear it shimmered like liquid gold beneath the morning sun. As he speaks, you continue tightening the loose fastening on the wagon. The work and the story flow together naturally. Hammer. Listen. Turn the wrench. Smile. Ask another question. The workshop has become a place where both iron and stories are gently mended. Before long, another traveler joins the conversation. This one is leading 2 pack mules carrying neatly bundled rolls of cloth. He has stopped only to water the animals before continuing eastward. Soon the 3 of you stand comfortably beneath the shade outside your workshop. No one appears hurried. The mules nibble contentedly at the grass. The horses flick their tails lazily. The breeze carries the scent of warm hay from nearby fields. It is easy to imagine that the afternoon itself has decided to slow down. The second traveler speaks of forests stretching farther than the eye can see. Of villages where every cottage roof is covered with wooden shingles instead of thatch. Of rivers so wide that crossing them requires ferries guided by long poles rather than bridges. He describes hills blanketed with purple heather. Windmills standing proudly against open skies. Apple orchards so large that autumn turns entire valleys into shades of gold and crimson. You listen quietly. Perhaps you will never visit these places. Many medieval craftsmen spend most of their lives within a few dozen miles of the village where they were born. Travel is slow. Work is plentiful. The forge is always waiting. Yet through the stories of passing travelers, the wider world gently visits your doorstep. Without leaving your workshop, you begin to know rivers you've never crossed, mountains you've never climbed, roads your own boots have never touched. There is something magical about that. As the afternoon drifts onward, sunlight takes on a softer, honey-colored glow. The shadows of the oak tree grow longer across the road. A flock of swallows circles high above the rooftops, turning together so gracefully that they seem almost like leaves carried upon the wind. The forge burns a little lower now. Not because it is tired. Simply because the busiest hours of the day are beginning to pass. You add one final scoop of charcoal. The familiar orange glow brightens once more. Steady. Dependable. Just as it has been since dawn. The travelers prepare to continue their journeys. The wagon wheel is secure once again. The horses are rested. The water buckets stand nearly empty. The driver climbs back onto his seat and gathers the reins loosely in his hands. Before leaving, he smiles. "I'll see you again before the harvest." You nod. You'll be welcome. There is no need to arrange a date. The seasons themselves will decide. He clicks his tongue gently. The horses begin walking. The wagon creaks softly as its wheels roll along the familiar village road. Clop. Creak. Clop. Creak. The sounds grow quieter with every passing moment until they blend into the peaceful afternoon beyond the fields. You remain standing in the doorway for a little while longer. Watching the road. Watching the dust slowly settle. Watching the village breathe at its own unhurried pace. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be more difficult than you first imagined. Not because the work is impossible, nor because every day is exhausting, but because contentment here comes from things your modern world often rushes past. A conversation without looking at the time. A traveler who measures distance in sunsets instead of miles. A repaired wagon wheel that quietly carries a family safely home. A horse walking comfortably because someone took the time to fit a shoe with care. These are small victories. So small that history seldom records them. Yet together, they quietly hold an entire world together. The last rays of afternoon sunlight shimmer across the road. The forge glows softly behind you. Living with the seasons. Summer heat around the forge. The travelers have long since disappeared beyond the gentle curve of the road. The sound of wagon wheels has faded into the distance. The village settles once again into its familiar afternoon calm, as though the road itself has taken a slow, contented breath after seeing another visitor safely on his way. You stand quietly in the doorway of your workshop for another moment. The breeze brushes gently across your face. It feels wonderfully cool. Almost surprisingly so. Because the instant you turn back toward the forge, the warmth greets you like an old friend. Not an overwhelming wave of heat. Just a steady embrace that has been waiting patiently for your return. Summer has a curious way of changing a blacksmith's world. Outside, everything seems eager to grow. The fields beyond the village ripple with tall grain, their green slowly giving way to soft shades of gold. Wildflowers bloom along the edges of winding paths. Honeybees drift lazily from blossom to blossom, carrying out their quiet work with remarkable dedication. Apple trees sway gently beneath the weight of fruit that will not be ready for many weeks yet. The entire countryside feels full of life. Inside the workshop, you are standing beside a fire. A very enthusiastic fire. It does not know, or perhaps simply does not care, that the air outside is already warm enough. Its purpose remains unchanged. To heat iron. Faithfully. Patiently. From dawn until dusk. The forge has no opinion about the weather. It burns with the same quiet determination whether snow falls outside or summer sunshine fills the sky. You take another scoop of charcoal from the wooden bin. The pieces are light in your hands, almost surprisingly so. Years earlier, each one began as part of a living tree. Now, carefully transformed through slow burning beneath layers of earth, the wood has become something altogether different. Clean burning. Hot. Perfect for the patient work of shaping iron. You scatter the charcoal gently over the glowing coals. Immediately, tiny sparks leap upward before disappearing into the chimney. The forge answers with its familiar crackle. Content. Steady. Always ready for another task. By now, the warmth has settled comfortably into every corner of the workshop. The thick oak beams above your head have absorbed years of gentle heat. The stone floor remains pleasantly cool beneath your boots, offering a welcome contrast to the glowing forge nearby. You are grateful for that. On summer afternoons like this one, every little patch of coolness feels like a small gift. A clay jug rests near the doorway where the breeze can reach it. Inside is fresh well water drawn earlier that morning. You lift the jug carefully and pour a little into a wooden cup. The water is cool. Not icy. There is no such luxury here. But after hours beside the forge, it tastes wonderfully refreshing. Simple things often do. You pause for a slow drink before returning the cup to the bench. There is no rush. The iron will wait another moment. Outside, the village seems to move a little more slowly beneath the afternoon sun. The shepherd has guided his flock beneath a line of tall elm trees where sheep rest comfortably in patches of shade. Several farmers pause beneath broad-brimmed hats while drinking from leather flasks before returning to the harvest. Even the village dogs have wisely abandoned unnecessary adventures in favor of peaceful naps beneath wagons. One particularly determined cat has claimed the windowsill outside your workshop. It has stretched itself into what appears to be the most comfortable shape imaginable. From time to time, one eye opens just enough to confirm that nothing exciting is happening. Apparently satisfied, it returns immediately to sleep. You cannot help but admire its commitment to relaxation. Perhaps the cat understands something the rest of the village occasionally forgets. Warm afternoons are made for slowing down. Of course. The forge has its own ideas. It continues radiating steady warmth, gently encouraging beads of perspiration to appear across your forehead. You wipe them away with the sleeve of your linen shirt. The fabric is damp now. Not soaked. Simply carrying the honest evidence of a long day's work. Your leather apron protects you from sparks and glowing iron, but it also holds the warmth close. By midday it has become almost like wearing a small wooden door across your chest. Reliable. Sturdy. And certainly not designed with modern ventilation in mind. You smile quietly to yourself. Centuries from now, someone may invent lightweight fabrics that breathe effortlessly in the summer heat. For today, linen, leather, and determination will do perfectly well. A young apprentice arrives carrying a sack of fresh charcoal over one shoulder. He sets it down carefully beside the workshop wall and lets out a long breath. The sack looks almost as heavy as he is. You thank him warmly. He grins. I'm getting stronger. You nod thoughtfully. You are. It is true. Only a few months ago he struggled to carry half that weight. Now he manages the entire sack, even if he is secretly quite pleased to put it back down again. Strength arrives quietly. One journey. One task. One ordinary day at a time. It rarely announces itself. One morning you simply realize that yesterday's burden no longer feels quite as heavy. The apprentice lingers while you open the sack. The charcoal inside is excellent. light, dry. Each piece gives a crisp little sound as it taps against another. Good charcoal has its own language. Experienced blacksmiths hear it almost without thinking. Poor charcoal crumbles too easily. Good charcoal rings softly, almost like pieces of dark pottery. You lift one piece into the sunlight. Its surface is deep black, yet surprisingly smooth. So much careful work has already gone into this fuel long before it ever reaches your forge. Someone cut the wood. Someone stacked it. Someone slowly transformed it beneath carefully covered earth until it became charcoal. The work of the village is connected in countless invisible ways. No craft truly stands alone. The baker needs the miller. The miller needs the carpenter. The carpenter needs the blacksmith. The blacksmith needs the charcoal burner. And everyone, in one way or another, depends upon the patient rhythm of the seasons. A gentle breeze wanders through the workshop once more. For a few precious moments, it carries away some of the warmth gathering around the forge. The hanging herbs drying beneath the roof sway softly. Bundles of mint, chamomile, and lavender collected from nearby fields. Their gentle fragrance mingles with the scent of warm wood, charcoal, and iron until the workshop smells surprisingly peaceful. Not harsh. Not smoky. Simply lived in. A place where honest work has been done for many years. If walls could remember, these walls would remember countless quiet afternoons just like this one. Generations of blacksmiths. Generations of farmers. Generations of neighbors stepping through the same doorway with the same friendly greeting. You return another piece of iron to the glowing coals. The familiar orange light reflects softly across the polished face of the anvil. Without thinking, your hands settle naturally into their work. The movements require no effort to remember now. Lift. Turn. Watch. Wait. Everything follows its own calm rhythm. There is something wonderfully reassuring about knowing exactly what the next step will be. Not because life has become boring, but because it has become familiar. Comfort often lives inside familiarity. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be more difficult than it first appears. Not because of the summer heat alone. Though standing beside a blazing forge in the middle of July certainly earns your respect. The greater challenge is that the weather never offers an excuse to stop. The fields still need tools. The horses still need shoes. The wagons still need repairs. Whether the day is cool or warm, clear or cloudy, the village continues depending upon steady hands. And so, with another peaceful breath, another scoop of charcoal, and another glowing piece of iron waiting patiently inside the fire, you continue your work, moving gently with the rhythm of summer itself, while the long golden afternoon slowly drifts toward evening. When winter made everything harder. As warm as the workshop feels today, you know it will not always be this way. The gentle breeze drifting through the doorway. The buzzing bees among the wildflowers. The scent of fresh cut hay carried across the fields. These are only visitors. Summer never stays forever. No one in the village expects it to. Instead, everyone watches the seasons the way an old friend watches the road, knowing another familiar face will soon appear around the bend. The blacksmith understands this perhaps better than most. Every season changes the work. The forge remains the same. The world around it does not. You imagine the very same workshop several months from now. The wide doorway is no longer thrown open to welcome cool air. Instead, it is pulled nearly shut against a sharp winter wind. Tiny gaps between the old wooden boards allow thin ribbons of cold air to sneak inside anyway. The fire burns brighter than ever. Not only to soften iron, but to push back against the chill that settles over the village before sunrise. Outside, the road that was once dry and dusty has become firm beneath a blanket of frost. Every footstep gives a gentle crunch. The roofs of the cottages sparkle beneath a layer of white that catches the first pale light of morning. Smoke rises straight upward from dozens of chimneys into still, crystal clear air. The whole village seems quieter somehow, as though winter itself has lowered its voice. You arrive at the workshop before dawn, just as you always do. Only now, the darkness lingers much longer. Summer greeted you with birdsong before sunrise. Winter prefers silence. Even the birds wait patiently for the daylight. You rub your hands together before reaching for the flint and steel. The forge has gone cold during the night. Yesterday's glowing coals are now nothing more than soft grey ash. Every morning begins the same way. A careful shower of sparks. A little dry tinder. Small pieces of kindling. Then charcoal. There are no matches tucked into your pocket. No switch waiting on the wall. Every fire begins from almost nothing, which makes every warm workshop feel like a small triumph. The first flames are modest, almost shy. They flicker gently among the wood shavings before finding the confidence to grow. You crouch beside them, working the bellows slowly. The leather sighs with every push. Fresh air feeds the fire. Orange light begins to spread across the charcoal. Little by little, warmth returns to the room. Not all at once. Gradually. Patiently. Much like the sunrise itself. The workshop slowly wakes. First the fire. Then the tools. Then your hands. Cold changes everything. The hammer feels different. Its wooden handle, perfectly comfortable in summer, now carries the night's chill deep into your palms. The iron resting upon the workbench feels almost startlingly cold when you first touch it. Even the anvil seems to have borrowed a little of winter's stubbornness. For the first hour of the day, you work with slightly slower movements. Not because you have forgotten your craft. Simply because your body needs a little time to remember warmth. Eventually, it does. It always does. Outside, the village has changed its rhythm as well. The farmers spend fewer hours in the fields. Instead, they repair fences, mend harnesses, and prepare for the coming spring. The shepherd keeps his flock closer to shelter. The baker's oven burns almost constantly, filling the cold morning air with the comforting scent of fresh bread. Children wrapped in thick woolen cloaks chase one another through patches of snow, their laughter drifting between the cottages. Someone has built a rather lopsided snowman beside the village well. Its nose is slightly crooked. Its smile is wonderfully cheerful. You suspect it may not survive until afternoon. The village dog already seems far too interested in investigating it. Winter also changes what people bring to your workshop. Instead of plows for turning earth, there are sled runners that need smoothing for snowy roads. Instead of repairing tools damaged during harvest, you mend cracked fireplace pokers, broken cooking hooks, and heavy iron latches for doors that must stand firm against icy winds. Even horses wear different shoes. Small metal studs are sometimes added to give them better footing on frozen ground. A horse slipping on ice can easily injure itself. Once again, a little preparation prevents much greater trouble. The lesson never grows old. You pause to warm your hands near the forge. Not too close. Years of experience have taught you that frozen fingers do not enjoy meeting blazing heat all at once. Instead, you hold them just near enough to feel the comforting warmth slowly returning. The sensation is deeply satisfying. Almost impossible to appreciate fully unless you've spent hours outdoors on a truly cold morning. Perhaps this is why winter fires have always seemed so welcoming. They do more than warm your hands. They remind you that comfort can be created, one careful spark at a time. A familiar knock sounds at the doorway. It is the elderly man who often stops to chat during his morning walks. Today, his beard carries tiny crystals of frost. He stamps the snow gently from his boots before stepping inside. "Cold enough for you?" he asks with a smile. You laugh softly. "I was just beginning to notice." He warms his hands near the forge while the two of you exchange a few quiet words. No urgent news. No important business. Just friendly conversation shared beside a welcoming fire. After a few minutes, he thanks you and continues on his way. Sometimes, in winter, warmth itself becomes a reason to visit. As the day unfolds, the forge becomes more than a workshop. It becomes one of the warmest places in the village. Neighbors pause at the doorway for a few minutes before continuing their errands. Travelers linger just long enough to thaw cold fingers around a wooden cup of warm broth. Even those with no repairs to collect often stop by simply to enjoy the company. Outside, winter asks everyone to stay apart. Inside the workshop, the fire quietly invites them together. The glow of the forge reaches beyond the anvil. It warms conversations, friendships, ordinary moments that might otherwise have been spent alone. You notice something else about winter. The evenings arrive astonishingly early. Long before supper, the sunlight has already begun to fade. Golden afternoon becomes pale grey. Then soft blue. Then darkness settles gently over the village. One by one, candles appear in cottage windows. Their tiny flames shimmer like little stars scattered across the hillside. Inside your workshop, the forge now provides almost all the light you need. The glowing coals paint everything in warm shades of amber and crimson. The polished face of the anvil reflects the fire like a quiet little sunset. It is beautiful in a simple sort of way. The kind of beauty that asks only to be noticed. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be harder than you first imagined. Not because winter is unbearable. People have lived through winters for thousands of years. The challenge is that the season demands preparation long before the first snowflake falls. If you forgot to gather enough charcoal in summer, winter would remember. If tools were left unrepaired before harvest ended, winter would remember. If wagon wheels were neglected, if roofs were left unfinished, if firewood remained uncut, winter would quietly reveal every forgotten task. The season was a patient teacher. It never hurried. It simply arrived, and asked whether you had been equally patient in preparing for it. As the last light of day fades beyond the frosted rooftops, you place one more piece of iron into the glowing forge. Outside, snow falls softly over the sleeping village. Inside, the fire crackles with gentle determination. The warmth surrounds you. The hammer waits faithfully beside the anvil. And for one peaceful winter evening, the little workshop becomes a tiny island of golden light in a world wrapped gently in white. The apprentice's long lessons. Becoming a blacksmith takes years. The morning sun rises softly over the village once again. Its golden light slips quietly across the rooftops, catches the dew resting on blades of grass, and slowly finds its way through the open doorway of your workshop. The forge is already awake. Its charcoal glows with the familiar warmth that has greeted you every morning for longer than you can easily remember. The anvil waits patiently in its usual place. The hammer rests upon the workbench. Everything feels exactly as it should. And yet, today there is another pair of footsteps approaching. Lighter than a farmer's. quicker than an old traveler's, still carrying just a hint of youthful uncertainty. Your apprentice has arrived. He greets you with an enthusiastic smile. "Good morning, master." His leather apron is still much newer than yours. Its edges remain firm and straight. His boots carry only a few scratches instead of years' worth of honest wear. Even the hammer hanging from his belt looks almost untouched compared to the smooth, well-used tools resting on your own bench. Looking at him, it is easy to remember your own first days. Long before your hands learned the language of iron. Long before the forge felt like home. You, too, once stood exactly where he stands now. Wondering how anyone could possibly remember so many different skills. The apprentice immediately reaches for the bellows. Not because you told him to. Because yesterday you showed him that the forge should always be checked before anything else. He gives the leather handles a careful pull. The fire responds with a gentle glow. Not too much. Not too little. You nod quietly. He noticed. That small lesson has already become a habit. It is remarkable how often true learning begins this way. Not through grand speeches, but through tiny routines repeated every single morning. If someone from your own time decided to become a medieval blacksmith, they might expect to spend a few weeks learning the basics. Perhaps a short course. Maybe several instructional books. Then, with enough determination, they imagine themselves confidently making swords before the month is over. The medieval village would smile kindly at this optimism. Then hand them a broom. Because before you shape iron, you sweep the workshop. Before you forge horseshoes, you learn to tend the fire. Before you repair wagons, you carry charcoal. And before anyone trusts you with expensive iron, you spend many quiet days simply watching. Watching carefully. Watching patiently. Watching until your eyes begin noticing details that once slipped by completely unseen. Your apprentice begins sweeping yesterday's iron scale from around the anvil. Tiny black flakes gather neatly into a pile. They sparkle faintly where the sunlight catches them. It is hardly exciting work. No songs will be written about legendary sweeping. No travelers will cross kingdoms hoping to witness a master craftsman skillfully collecting bits of charcoal dust. Yet the workshop grows cleaner, safer, more pleasant. Small jobs matter, perhaps more than they first appear. The apprentice finishes without complaint. That tells you something important. He understands that every task belongs to the craft. Not only the glamorous ones. You hand him a bundle of iron rods. "Let's make nails today." His face brightens. Real work. Or at least, what feels like real work. You smile quietly. Making a good nail is far more difficult than many people imagine. It is small enough that every mistake becomes immediately obvious. There is nowhere for uneven hammer blows to hide. No decorative flourishes to distract the eye. Just one simple object. Made well. Or not. You demonstrate first. The iron enters the forge. Its dark grey surface slowly turns cherry red. Then bright orange. You lift it smoothly with the tongs and place it upon the anvil. Tap. Turn. Tap. Turn. The point grows longer with every careful strike. Nothing dramatic. No shower of sparks. No mighty blows echoing across the valley. Just steady movements. Quiet confidence. Within moments, a perfectly shaped nail rests upon the workbench. You place it beside the apprentice. "Now you." He nods eagerly. Perhaps a little too eagerly. His iron reaches the correct color. He carries it to the anvil with great concentration. He raises the hammer. Clang! The strike lands slightly too far to one side. The glowing iron bends unexpectedly. He blinks. Not quite the result he imagined. You say nothing. Instead, you simply wait. He studies the iron for a moment before gently turning it. Another careful strike. Then another. The shape improves. Not perfect, but better. Far better. Learning often looks exactly like this. Not a straight path. A series of quiet corrections. By the third nail, he begins relaxing. His shoulders loosen. His breathing slows. The hammer lands more accurately. The point grows straighter. The head becomes more even. Tiny improvements. Almost invisible unless someone had watched from the beginning. You have. And so you notice them all. That is one of the greatest responsibilities of a teacher. To see progress before the student can. Because beginners often judge themselves only by perfection. Masters learn to celebrate improvement. Outside, the village continues its peaceful morning. A milkmaid walks past carrying 2 wooden buckets suspended from a yoke across her shoulders. The milk sloshes gently with every careful step. A pair of geese follows behind her for reasons known only to themselves. They seem convinced they are helping. She does not appear entirely persuaded. One goose pauses outside your workshop and peers inside with great seriousness. It studies the apprentice. The apprentice studies the goose. After a thoughtful silence, the goose decides that nothing particularly interesting is happening and waddles away with quiet dignity. The apprentice laughs. So that's today's inspector. Indeed, you reply. Unfortunately, we passed. The laughter settles warmly into the workshop before disappearing beneath the familiar rhythm of the forge. As the morning unfolds, you realize something many people overlook when imagining medieval apprenticeships. The teaching rarely happens through long explanations. Instead, it lives inside ordinary moments. You adjust the apprentice's grip on the hammer by only the width of a finger. You remind him to stand with his feet balanced. You show him how to watch the color of the iron instead of staring only at the hammer. Each lesson lasts only a few seconds, yet repeated hundreds of times over many years. They quietly shape not only a craftsman, but a person. Patience, attention, humility. The forge teaches all of them equally well. The apprentice wipes a little soot from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. He looks down at the row of nails he has made. They are not identical. Some lean ever so slightly. One head is a little wider than the others. Another point is just a touch too blunt. He frowns. They're not very good. You pick up the first nail he made. Then the last. You place them side by side. For a moment, he simply looks. Then his expression changes. The difference is obvious now. The final nail is straighter, smoother, more confident. You hand both nails back to him. The first one taught you. You point to the second. This one thanked you. He smiles. A quiet smile. The kind that comes not from praise, but from understanding. Perhaps this is another reason why you couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because the work is too difficult, or because the forge is too hot, but because mastery asks for something your modern world rarely enjoys giving. Time. Not days. Not weeks. Years. Years spent making simple things before complicated ones. Years spent learning by watching instead of rushing ahead. Years spent accepting that being a beginner is not a problem to escape, but a season to appreciate. As another piece of iron begins glowing softly inside the forge, your apprentice reaches for the tongs with a little more confidence than he had this morning. Only a little, but enough. And sometimes, a little is exactly how every master first begins. The things that break. Repairing the village's everyday life. Morning arrives quietly over the village. A thin mist rests above the fields, softening the edges of trees and rooftops until everything appears slightly dreamlike. The first rays of sunlight slowly push through the haze. Birds begin their gentle songs. The mill wheel starts turning. Smoke rises from chimneys as families begin preparing their breakfasts. And inside your workshop, the forge awakens once again. There is something comforting about a morning routine. The same doorway, the same anvil, the same tools waiting exactly where you left them. The same small rituals that begin every working day. You sweep yesterday's iron flakes from the floor. You arrange the tools beside the anvil. You check the charcoal. You prepare the fire. Nothing about these actions would seem remarkable to someone passing by. Yet these small preparations are what allow the larger work to happen. A strong day is built from quiet beginnings. Before long, the first visitor arrives. A farmer carrying a broken rake. He places it gently against the workbench. The wooden handle is still strong, but several of the iron teeth have bent after weeks of clearing fields. The farmer looks slightly embarrassed. As if the field fought back, he says, "You smile." Fields often do. They hide stones beneath the soil. They hold roots tightly. They test every tool that enters them. A farmer and a field have a long conversation over many years. Sometimes the field wins. Sometimes the farmer does. Usually, they simply continue negotiating. You examine the rake carefully. A modern person might look at it and think, why repair this? Why not simply buy another? But in this village, objects are not disposable. They are companions. A rake is not just a piece of metal and wood. It has helped gather hay, prepared gardens, cleared paths after storms. It has been held by familiar hands through countless ordinary days. Replacing it would mean replacing something that has already earned its place. So you repair it, not because it is the newest solution, because it is the right one. The damaged iron teeth go into the forge. The fire begins its quiet work. While you wait, the farmer stands nearby. He watches the glowing metal. Many people enjoy watching a blacksmith work. There is something almost hypnotic about it. The orange glow. The steady hammer. The sparks rising briefly before disappearing. Perhaps it reminds people of something ancient. Something connected to the very beginning of human craftsmanship. The moment when someone first discovered that stone and fire could transform the world. You remove the heated iron. The hammer falls. Clang. The bent tooth slowly straightens. Clang. Another careful adjustment. Clang. A small crack is repaired. There is no dramatic moment. No sudden transformation. Just patient correction. That is how most repairs happen. Quietly. One small problem at a time. The farmer thanks you and leaves with his rake. Another visitor arrives almost immediately. Then another. A kitchen knife with a damaged handle. A broken hinge from a barn door. A loose iron bracket from a wooden cart. A pair of worn shears used for cutting wool. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing that would appear in a royal hall. But together, these small repairs keep the village alive. The blacksmith's work is woven into almost every part of daily life. You begin to notice something. The things that break are often the things that matter most. A broken sword might be remembered in a story. A broken crown might be recorded by historians. But a broken cooking hook? A damaged plough? A cracked wagon wheel? Those are the things that affect ordinary people immediately. A family cannot prepare food properly without working tools. A farmer cannot harvest efficiently without reliable equipment. A merchant cannot travel without a strong wagon. The quiet objects often carry the greatest responsibilities. Around midday, an old man arrives carrying a small iron box. It is not valuable because of the material. The iron itself is simple. The craftsmanship is modest. But the man holds it carefully, almost lovingly. "This belonged to my father," he says. You open the lid gently. Inside are a few small personal items. A wooden carving. A faded piece of cloth. A tiny metal charm. Things that would mean very little to anyone else. Yet to him, they are priceless. The hinge of the box has broken. A tiny problem. A tiny repair. But you understand immediately that this is not just about fixing a piece of metal. It is about protecting memories. You work more carefully than usual. Not because the repair is complicated. Because it matters. The hammer strikes are softer. The adjustments are smaller. The attention is greater. The old man watches silently. When you finish, he opens and closes the box several times. Testing. Remembering. Smiling. "Good as new," he says. You know it is not exactly true. The box has gained more years. More scratches. More stories. It is not new. It is something better. It has continued. The afternoon continues with more visitors. A young couple brings a damaged cooking pot handle. A shepherd brings a broken buckle from his leather strap. A carpenter brings several old nails that have been pulled from a beam and need reshaping. Every repair has its own story. Every object has served someone. Every piece of iron has a reason for being there. You begin to see the workshop differently. It is not a place where broken things come to be fixed. It is a place where useful things are given another chance. Perhaps this is another reason why you couldn't survive as a medieval blacksmith. Not because repairing things is unpleasant. There is great satisfaction in returning something useful to the world. The difficulty is carrying the responsibility. When something breaks, people come to you. When a tool fails, people depend on you. When winter arrives and a family needs a secure door latch, they hope your hands are steady. When harvest season begins and a farmer needs his equipment, they trust your work. The village does not simply ask you to make things. It asks you to help keep life moving. As evening approaches, the workshop grows quieter. The line of visitors finally disappears. The road outside becomes peaceful again. The forge burns lower. The last golden sunlight stretches across the floor. You look around at the day's work. A repaired rake. A strengthened hinge. A restored box. A collection of ordinary objects that will quietly return to ordinary lives. Nothing famous. Nothing grand. Yet somehow, it feels like a successful day. You place another piece of charcoal onto the glowing coals and watch the fire respond. Tomorrow, more things will break. More people will arrive. More repairs will begin. And once again, the little workshop beside the village road will do what it has always done. Listen. Repair. Restore. One careful piece of iron at a time. The weight of being needed. The evening settles gently over the village. The golden light that filled the workshop has slowly faded into softer shades of orange and grey. Outside, the day's activity has quieted. The farmer has returned from the fields. The baker has cleaned his ovens. The carpenter has stacked his tools away. One by one, the village closes its doors and begins preparing for a peaceful night. But inside your workshop, the forge still glows. Not brightly now. Just enough. A quiet bed of warmth beneath the darkening room. You sit for a moment beside the anvil. The hammer rests nearby. Your hands are still. After a full day of shaping, repairing, lifting, and carrying, even the strongest craftsman appreciates a moment of stillness. The silence feels different after a busy day. Not empty. Comfortable. Like a familiar song ending on the final note. You look around the workshop. The walls are marked by years of work. Small scratches in the wood. Dark patches where sparks have landed. Tools hanging from their usual places. Each corner holds a memory. That old pair of tongs was the first good tool you ever bought. That worn wooden stool belonged to the blacksmith who taught you. That section of the workbench still carries the marks from your earliest attempts at shaping iron. A workshop remembers. Not through words. Through traces. Every craftsman leaves a little part of themselves behind. Tomorrow morning, the village will bring more broken things. That is simply how life works. Wood cracks. Leather wears. Iron bends. Stone breaks. Nothing made by human hands lasts forever. At first, that might seem disappointing. But perhaps it is also what gives things meaning. A tool that never broke would never need care. A door that never needed repair would never remind anyone of the hands that built it. Where is evidence of usefulness? Damage is often proof that something served its purpose. A worn hammer tells a story. A scratched cooking pot tells a story. A repaired wagon wheel tells a story. Things become valuable not only because they are new, but because they have been part of someone's life. You think about the old iron box you repaired earlier. To anyone else, it was a small object. A simple container. A few pieces of metal joined together. But to the old man who carried it into your workshop, it contained memories. This is something blacksmiths learn over time. You are rarely repairing only the object. You are repairing what the object allows someone to do. A plow is not just iron. It is food. A horseshoe is not just metal. It is travel. A hinge is not just a hinge. It is a safe home. A cooking hook is not just a hook. It is a warm meal shared with family. The work may look small. The purpose rarely is. The door of the workshop opens slightly. You turn. Your apprentice stands there. He has returned after finishing his evening chores. Still working. You smile. Just thinking. He steps inside and looks around. For a moment, he sees what you see. Not just tools. Not just iron. A place full of stories. Does it ever become easy? He asks. It is a question every apprentice eventually asks. Not always with words. Sometimes with tired shoulders. Sometimes with a frustrated sigh after a difficult piece of work refuses to cooperate. You think carefully before answering. No. The apprentice looks surprised. You continue. But you become better. The forge crackles softly. A small spark rises and disappears. The lesson is simple. The work does not become easier because the iron changes. The iron remains iron. The fire remains fire. The hammer remains heavy. What changes is you. Your hands become more skilled. Your eyes become more observant. Your patience grows stronger. The challenge stays the same. You simply learn how to meet it. The apprentice picks up a small piece of scrap iron from the bench. He turns it over in his hand. How many things do you think you've repaired? You laugh quietly. There is no answer. Hundreds? Thousands? More than you could count. A lifetime of broken tools and worn objects has passed through your hands. Yet you remember only some of them. Not because they were unusual. Because of the people who carried them. The farmer whose father used the same plough. The traveler whose wagon carried goods between villages. The child who proudly brought his first small tool to be repaired. The elderly man protecting his father's memory inside an iron box. Objects fade. People remain. Outside, the first stars begin appearing above the rooftops. The village becomes still. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once. A few moments later, another answers. Then silence returns. The night has begun. You cover the forge carefully. The glowing coals will rest until morning. The tools are cleaned. The workbench is cleared. Everything is prepared for another day. This preparation is another part of the craft. A blacksmith does not simply finish work. A blacksmith prepares to begin again. As you close the workshop door, you glance back one final time. The room is dark now, except for the faint red glow beneath the covered forge. Tomorrow, the fire will return. Tomorrow, the hammer will ring again. Tomorrow, someone will arrive carrying something broken. And you will listen. You will examine it. You will decide what can be saved. Then you will begin. Not because the village expects perfection. Because the village needs someone willing to care. Perhaps this is the hardest part of surviving as a medieval blacksmith. Not the heat. Not the heavy tools. Not the endless repetition. The hardest part is understanding that your work matters even when nobody celebrates it. Most days, nobody will sing your name. Nobody will write down that you repaired a hinge or reshaped a nail. History remembers kings. It remembers battles. It remembers great buildings. But it rarely remembers the person who quietly kept ordinary life working. Yet every village depended on those people. The steady hands. The patient workers. The craftsmen who showed up every morning. You walk home beneath the quiet evening sky. Behind you, the workshop rests. Ahead, a warm meal waits. The day is finished. The repairs are complete. The village sleeps peacefully because hundreds of small things continue working exactly as they should. And tomorrow, when the sun rises again, the forge will glow. The hammer will rise. The price of the craft. The things you give up. The village wakes slowly. A pale morning light spreads across the fields, touching the rooftops one by one. Mist rests above the river. The trees stand quietly in the cool air. For a few peaceful moments, the world seems completely still. Then, a familiar sound begins. A soft crackle. A gentle breath of air through leather. The first glow of the forge. Another day begins. You enter the workshop carrying the same quiet routine you have carried for many years. The door opens. The tools wait. The anvil stands patiently. The fire welcomes you back. Everything feels familiar, comforting, almost effortless. But behind every familiar thing lies a hidden cost. Every craft asks something in return. And the life of a medieval blacksmith asks for more than most people realize. From the outside, the workshop looks almost magical. People see the sparks. They hear the ringing hammer. They watch glowing iron transform into useful objects. There is something beautiful about it. A piece of dull metal enters the fire, and a finished tool emerges. It seems almost like a small miracle. But people rarely see the hours before the miracle. The preparation, the exhaustion, the patience, the sacrifices. A young traveler passing through the village once stood outside your workshop and said, "You must love having such an exciting life." You smiled, because he was not wrong. But he was also not entirely right. Yes, there is beauty here. There is satisfaction. There is pride in creating something with your own hands. But there are also mornings when the bed feels warm and comfortable. Mornings when the winter wind sounds unpleasant outside. Mornings when your body quietly suggests that perhaps today could be a day of rest. And then, someone knocks at the door. A farmer needs a repaired tool. A horse needs new shoes. A wagon needs fixing before a journey. The village continues. And so do you. One of the first things you give up as a blacksmith is time. Not all of it, but much of it. Your mornings belong to the forge. Your afternoons belong to the people who need your work. Your evenings often belong to cleaning, preparing, and planning for tomorrow. There is always another task waiting. Another piece of iron. Another repair. Another reason to return to the workshop. The craft becomes part of your life so completely that it is difficult to separate the two. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Many people spend their lives searching for something meaningful to dedicate themselves to. You have found yours. The forge gives purpose. The work gives structure. The village gives a reason. But even meaningful things require balance. A tree that grows too quickly without strong roots eventually falls. A fire that burns too fiercely consumes its own fuel. Even a blacksmith must learn when to step away from the anvil. Your apprentice learns this lesson slowly. One afternoon, after hours of practice, he continues striking the hammer long after his movements have become tired. You notice immediately. The sound has changed. A skilled strike has a certain confidence. His strikes now sound forced. Heavy. Uneven. You place a hand gently on the anvil. The ringing stops. Rest. He looks disappointed. But I can continue. You nod. I know. That is exactly why you tell him to stop. Strength is not only knowing how to work harder. It is knowing when to protect the ability to work tomorrow. The human body is a remarkable tool. But unlike iron, it cannot simply be placed into the forge and reshaped. A damaged hammer can be repaired. A cracked horseshoe can be replaced. But tired muscles, injured joints, and worn-out hands require patience. A blacksmith's greatest tool is not the hammer. It is the person holding it. You look at your own hands. They tell the story of your life. The thickened skin. The small scars. The marks left behind by thousands of careful movements. They are not damaged hands. They are experienced hands. Hands that have built. Hands that have repaired. Hands that have helped. But even strong hands have limits. The old blacksmith who taught you used to say, "Respect your tools, especially the one attached to your arm." At the time, you thought he was joking. Years later, you understood. Another thing you give up is comfort. The forge does not care whether the weather is pleasant. In summer, it adds heat to heat. In winter, it fights against the cold. Rain outside. Snow outside. Wind outside. The fire still burns. The hammer still falls. A blacksmith's work follows necessity, not convenience. When something important breaks, people rarely wait for perfect weather. Neither can you. Yet there are rewards hidden inside these sacrifices. When a farmer returns in spring with the same plow you repaired years ago. When a traveler returns safely because his wagon held together. When someone smiles because an old family object has been restored. You remember why you stayed. The craft takes much from you. But it also gives something back. A feeling that your days have mattered. A quiet knowledge that the world around you is slightly better because you were there. The morning passes gently. The forge burns steadily. Your apprentice works beside you. The village continues beyond the workshop walls. You lift another piece of iron from the fire. It glows brightly. Waiting. Ready. You raise the hammer. And as the first strike echoes through the workshop, you think about the strange balance of this life. You lose time, but gain purpose. You lose comfort, but gain skill. You lose the ease of an ordinary life, but gain the rare satisfaction of becoming truly good at something. Perhaps that is the hidden price of every meaningful craft. It asks you to give something, but if you give it willingly, it gives something back. The hammer rises again. The forge glows. And another quiet day of the blacksmith's life begins. The quiet burdens nobody sees. The sound of the hammer continues through the afternoon. A steady rhythm. A familiar rhythm. Clang. Pause. Clang. Pause. Each strike sends a small vibration through the anvil and into the floor beneath your feet. After many years, you no longer notice every sound individually. The workshop has become a kind of language. The fire speaks. The iron responds. The hammer answers. And your hands understand. But behind the peaceful rhythm of the forge, there are burdens that few people see. The villagers see the finished work. They see the strong horseshoe fitted onto a horse's hoof. They see the repaired gate hinge hanging perfectly on a barn door. They see the sharp blade returned to a farmer's hand. They see the result. They rarely see everything that came before. The early mornings. The careful preparation. The mistakes corrected. The hours spent learning. The moments when the iron refused to cooperate. A blacksmith learned something important very early. Iron has no interest in your plans. You may begin the day with a simple task. A few nails. A small repair. Something that should take only a short while. Then suddenly, a piece of iron cracks. A tool breaks. A measurement was slightly wrong. The work that seemed simple becomes something completely different. The forge does not apologize. The iron does not explain itself. You simply adapt. That is part of the craft. Your apprentice experiences this lesson today. He has been working on a small bracket for a wooden chest. Nothing complicated. A simple shape. A simple purpose. He carefully heats the iron. He carefully measures the bends. He carefully begins forming it. For a while, everything goes perfectly. Then one strike lands slightly too hard. The curve changes. Not ruined, but no longer what he intended. He looks disappointed. I have to start again. You examine the piece. No. He looks surprised. No. You hand it back. Not everything imperfect is useless. You place the piece beside the correct design. The difference is clear. The bend is slightly wider. The shape is not as elegant. But it is still strong. Still useful. Still capable of doing its job. The apprentice studies it quietly. Perhaps he expected craftsmanship to mean never making mistakes. Many beginners do. But true craftsmanship is not the absence of mistakes. It is knowing what to do when they happen. A master is not someone who never fails. A master is someone who understands how to recover. This lesson applies beyond the forge. Life itself rarely follows the exact shape we imagine. A journey takes longer. A plan changes. A season brings unexpected difficulties. A person discovers that the path ahead is different from what they expected. The wise learn to adjust. Like heated iron. Not by losing their purpose, but by changing their shape when necessary. As the day continues, another burden appears. Responsibility. A village blacksmith is not only a craftsman. He is someone people depend upon. That dependence is an honor. But it is also heavy. When a farmer arrives with a broken plough just before planting season, you understand what that means. His work depends on your work. When a traveler arrives with a damaged wagon wheel before a long journey, you understand what that means. His safety depends on your work. Your mistakes do not remain inside the workshop. They travel outward. That knowledge encourages care. It encourages patience. It encourages humility. You remember the first time someone trusted you with an important repair. You were young. Your hands were skilled enough to work. But your confidence was not yet equal to your responsibility. You checked everything twice. Then 3 times. You wondered if you had done enough. The old blacksmith who trained you watched silently. Finally, he said, "If you care enough to worry, you are already learning." At the time, you were not sure what he meant. Years later, you understand. Care is the beginning of mastery. The afternoon light slowly changes. The bright colors of midday soften. The workshop becomes filled with warm golden shadows. Dust particles float through the sunlight near the doorway. For a moment, everything seems peaceful. You watch your apprentice carefully cleaning his tools. He does not know you are watching. He places each one back in its proper place. He wipes away dirt. He checks the edges. A small smile appears on your face. The lessons are working. Not just the lessons about iron. The lessons about respect. Perhaps this is another reason why surviving as a medieval blacksmith would be difficult. The challenge is not only physical. It is emotional. You carry the knowledge that your work matters. You cannot simply create something quickly and forget about it. Your name is connected to what you make. Your reputation travels farther than you do. A well-made tool may be used for decades. A poorly made one may cause trouble long after you have forgotten making it. Every strike carries a little piece of your responsibility. Yet this burden has a beautiful side. Because responsibility creates connection. The village knows you. Not as a distant worker. As a neighbor. People bring their problems to your door because they trust your hands. They know you will listen. They know you will try. They know you will care. In a world without endless choices and instant replacements, trust becomes something precious. A good craftsman earns it slowly, day by day, repair by repair, season by season. As evening approaches, you finish the final task of the day. A simple iron latch. Nothing special. Nothing that will be admired. It will be attached to a cottage door tomorrow. Someone will open it each morning. Someone will close it each night. Years may pass. The latch may become unnoticed. That is often the fate of good work. The best things quietly disappear into daily life. They simply continue doing what they were made to do. You extinguish the forge slowly. The flames shrink. The bright orange fades into a soft red glow. The workshop grows darker. Your apprentice gathers the last tools. Together, you close the door. The village rests. The day's burdens remain behind. But so does the satisfaction. Another repair completed. Another problem solved. Another small piece of the world kept working. And perhaps that is the greatest secret of the blacksmith's life. The work is heavy. The days are long. The responsibilities are many. But there is a deep peace in knowing that your hands have been useful. That your effort has mattered. That somewhere, because you showed up today, a door will close properly. A wagon will roll safely. A farmer will return to his field. A family will cook their evening meal. Small things. Quiet things. But together, they make a life. The last ring of the hammer. The life you built. The morning arrives more quietly than usual. The village is still sleeping beneath a pale blanket of mist. The fields are silent. The road is empty. Even the birds seem reluctant to begin their songs too early. But inside the workshop, a familiar glow appears. The forge wakes. The fire breathes. The old anvil waits. You step through the doorway, just as you have done countless times before. For a moment, everything feels exactly the same. The same wooden beams above your head. The same tools hanging from the walls. The same smell of charcoal and warm iron filling the air. The same peaceful feeling of returning to a place that knows you. And yet, something feels different. Not wrong. Just different. A feeling that comes when you realize how much time has passed. When you first entered this workshop many years ago, everything seemed enormous. The forge looked like a powerful creature that needed to be understood. The hammer felt heavy. The sounds were unfamiliar. The work seemed endless. You wondered if you would ever truly belong here. Now, years later, the workshop feels almost like an extension of yourself. You know every sound, every tool, every corner. You know which floorboard makes a small creaking noise near the doorway. You know which part of the anvil gives the clearest ring. You know how the fire behaves when the weather changes. The forge is no longer something you work beside. It is something you have lived alongside. Your apprentice enters carrying fresh charcoal. But something has changed there too. He no longer moves like a beginner. His steps are confident. His hands are steady. His eyes notice details before you mention them. The young person who once struggled to hold a pair of tongs now works with the quiet confidence of someone who understands the craft. Time has done what time always does. It has passed. Slowly. Silently. Almost unnoticed. You watch him begin preparing the forge. You remember the first day he arrived. The nervous smile. The uncertain grip on the hammer. The first imperfect nail. The first mistake. The first small success. All those moments seemed ordinary when they happened. But now, looking back, they were the true treasures. Not the finished tools. Not the repaired objects. The moments between. The learning. The patience. The friendship. A farmer arrives later that morning. He brings a tool for repair. Then he pauses. He looks at your apprentice. Not you. Your apprentice. And he says, "I hear he does fine work." You smile quietly. There is no greater compliment a teacher can receive. Not praise for yourself, but trust given to someone you help guide. The craft continues. That is how traditions survive. Not through books alone. Not through tools alone. Through people. One person teaching another. One pair of hands showing another pair of hands. You step aside and allow your apprentice to handle the repair. You still watch. Of course you do. A teacher never completely stops watching. But you no longer need to correct every movement. He knows. He understands. The hammer rises. The iron changes. The work continues. And for the first time, you realize something important. The workshop does not belong only to the person standing beside the forge. It belongs to everyone who carries the knowledge forward. Every blacksmith leaves something behind. Not just objects. Not just tools. A way of seeing the world. A belief that things are worth repairing. That patience matters. That careful work has value. You step outside for a moment. The village looks different from when you first arrived. Some buildings have changed. Some faces are new. Some old friends are gone. Children you once saw playing near the road now have children of their own. The oak tree beside the workshop has grown wider. Its branches reach farther. Its roots have gone deeper. You realize that you and the tree have something in common. Neither of you became what you are quickly. Both simply continued. Season after season. Year after year. Growing quietly. Perhaps, if someone from the future visited this village, they might wonder why you stayed. Why choose a life beside a hot forge? Why spend years shaping iron? Why work so hard when the world keeps changing? The answer would be difficult to explain. Because it is not about the iron. Not really. It is about belonging. About waking each morning knowing exactly where you are needed. About creating something that will outlast the moment. About helping people you know. About hearing the sound of a hammer and realizing that, somehow, this simple rhythm has become the music of your life. The afternoon arrives gently. The final repair of the day rests upon the workbench. A small iron hook. A simple object. The kind of thing most people would never notice. You could finish it quickly. You know how. Your hands could almost do the work without thought. But you do not hurry. You take your time. Because after all these years, you understand something. The value of a thing is not measured only by its size. A tiny hook made well is still an expression of care. A small kindness is still kindness. A simple task done with attention is still meaningful. The forge glows. The hammer rises. For perhaps the 1,000th time. For perhaps the last time. You bring it down. Clang. The sound travels through the workshop. through the wooden walls, through the open doorway, across the quiet village. It is only one sound, one strike, but it carries a lifetime. The mornings, the winters, the summers, the apprentices, the travelers, the farmers, the countless repairs, the countless ordinary days, all of them living inside that single moment. And now you understand the truth. You could not have survived as a medieval blacksmith because you would have needed more than strength, more than skill, more than patience. You would have needed a willingness to live slowly, to value things that are easily overlooked, to find meaning in repetition, to accept that a good life is not always a dramatic one. Sometimes, a good life is simply one where your hands have been useful, where your work has helped others, where your days have had purpose, where the fire you tended also warmed the people around you. The evening sun begins to set. You close the workshop door gently. The forge rests. The hammer returns to its place. The village becomes quiet. And somewhere, beyond the hills, another blacksmith begins another morning. Another fire. Another hammer. Another lifetime of small, important work. The craft continues. The story continues. And the old workshop beside the village road remains exactly what it has always been. A place where ordinary hands create extraordinary meaning.